Chapter 6:16. Letter of Divorce. Whoosh. Juowen slowly stood up with a hint of anger in his eyes. He wasn't angry because Glen Narcissus wanted to break the engagement. After all, he didn't know that Glen Lily, and he agreed with her breaking the engagement. However, Glen Narcissus and the other three's attitude towards the Zhuo family made Juowen extremely angry. Especially Glen Narcissus' high and mighty attitude. It was as if the Zhuo family was as insignificant as ants in her eyes. His grandfather, Zhuo Xiangding, had already lowered himself, but the four of them felt that it was right and proper. Their words weren't courteous at all. How could Juowen not be angry? So it's on you. You must have seen the marriage contract, right? With your Zhuo family, a child from a small family like you isn't worthy of Sister Lily. I think you should know your place, right? Glen Narcissus glanced at Juowen with a mocking smile. She didn't put a mere Juowen in her eyes, so her words were very natural. This marriage contract was signed by Glen Haohai and my father, Zhuo Xiaotian, 20 years ago. Who do you think you are? Do you have the qualifications to change the marriage contract? Juowen narrowed his eyes and said coldly. What did you say? Who do I think I am? You're just a child from a small family. How dare you speak like that in front of me? Even the patriarch of your Zhuo family doesn't dare to be so impudent. What qualifications do you have to refute me? Glen Narcissus' face darkened. She was originally the golden branch and jade leaf of the Glen family. Since young, everything had gone according to her wishes. When had anyone ever refuted her? At this moment, Juowen actually talked back to her. Glen Narcissus naturally felt extremely uncomfortable in her heart. Second miss. This child is arrogant, conceited. He's clearly just a little bastard from a small family. How dare he be so impudent in front of us? Let Qin Mu teach this child a lesson for you? The black-clothed man who was originally silent suddenly stood up and cupped his hands towards Glen Narcissus. However, his gaze was fixed on Juowen with a cold expression. Glen Daffodil shook her head and stared at Juowen, saying, Juowen, you're not an impulsive person, are you? This time, we're only here for the marriage contract. Of course, we won't ask for it for nothing. We've also brought a lot of things as compensation. As he spoke, the Glen Daffodil flicked his finger, and a stream of light appeared and landed in the middle of the hall. Spirit ring. Juowen looked at the ring in Glen Narcissus's hand in surprise. His heart was slightly moved. This spirit ring could only be created by 4 supremacy realm expert. The Glen family's foundation was indeed not bad. This Glen Narcissus actually had a spirit ring. I brought 2 monarch rank armor skills, 10 4th grade spirit herbs, and a low grade earth rank spirit artifact this time. I presume these things ought to be sufficient to compensate all of your losses, right? Glen Narcissus' words slowly sounded within the space. Immediately, the items that Glen Narcissus had mentioned earlier appeared in the middle of the hall. Looking at the 2 armor skills, 10 4th grade spirit herbs, and a low-grade earth-rank spirit artifact on the ground, Juowen's face was filled with a cold smile. If it was the Zhuo family of the past, these items would indeed be considered extremely precious. However, it was different now. The resources that Juowen had obtained from the Blood Demon inheritance far exceeded the 3 items that Glen Narcissus had taken out. Not to mention Juowen, even Zhuo Xiangding and the others probably did not think much of these items. Seeing that the upper echelons of the Zhuo family in the hall were indifferent, Glen Narcissus frowned slightly. Although these items were insignificant to the Glen family, they were like treasures to a small family like the Zhuo family. Originally, Glen Narcissus thought that these items were enough to shock Zhuo Xiangding and the others. However, she did not expect that the truth was not what she had expected. What? Is it not enough? Glen Narcissus said coldly. Zhuo Xiangding and the others did not speak. Instead, they looked at Juowen. Right now, the backbone of the Zhuo family was Juowen. Moreover, this matter was related to Juowen. Naturally, Juowen would make the decision. Seeing that Zhuo Xiangding and the others were all staring at the young Zhuowen, as if they were following Zhuowen's lead, Glen Narcissus was rather puzzled. Could it be that the huge Zhuo family was led by this Zhuowen? Perhaps it's because this marriage contract is related to this Zhuowen. That's why Zhuo Xiangding and the others are acting like this. Glen Narcissus thought to herself. She did not care much about the actions of Zhuo Xiangding and the others. At this moment, Zhuowen's gaze became colder and colder. This Glen Narcissus had never put the Zhuo family in her eyes. Her words were dignified, but in reality, her goal was to break off the marriage contract. Slowly taking out the marriage contract from his chest, Zhuowen said indifferently, "The marriage contract is indeed with me. Moreover, I'm not very interested in this marriage." "You're really sensible. It's impossible for your Zhuo family to be worthy of our Glen family, and you're even more unworthy of Sister Baihe. Wouldn't it have been better if you had taken out the marriage contract earlier?" Glen Narcissus smiled. However, Zhuowen shook his head and sneered, "Do you really think that our Zhuo family cares about your Glen family? Aren't you being a little too full of yourself?" As he spoke, Zhuowen flicked his finger. The spirit ring on his finger flickered, and he immediately took out a piece of paper and a pen. Glen Narcissus and the other three also noticed the spirit ring on Zhuowen's finger. Their pupils shrank. They naturally recognized the spirit ring. This spirit ring could only be owned by the 4 Supreme Realm experts. The number of people in the Glen family who could own a spirit ring did not exceed 2-digit. However, Zhuowen, who they did not put in their eyes, actually had such a precious spirit ring on his hand. How could this not surprise Glen Narcissus and the other three? Ignoring the strange looks on the 4's faces, Zhuowen took the pen and immediately wrote on the white rice paper. What was this kid doing? Zhuowen's actions at this moment immediately caused Glen Narcissus and the other three to frown. However, they did not ask. Instead, they watched coldly from the side. They wanted to see what this kid wanted to do. In the time of 5 breaths, the rice paper was filled with perfectly round black word. Zhuowen took a deep breath, put away the pen and picked up the paper. Everything was done in one go. With a wave of his right hand, Zhuowen immediately handed the rice paper to Glen Narcissus. After that, Zhuowen's voice slowly rang out, "You don't have to take the marriage contract. This is the letter of divorce that I personally wrote. Since your Glen family looks down on our Zhuo family will naturally not be cold to you. This letter of divorce will end the marriage contract between our 2 families." Letter of divorce? Glen Narcissus took the rice paper and browsed through the black words on the paper. However, her pretty face slowly darkened. This time, she did not come here to ask for the letter of divorce. Instead, she came here to secretly destroy the marriage contract. After all, their Glen family was one of the 5 great families of the Imperial City. If others knew that their Glen family had a marriage contract with a nameless small family like the Zhuo family, it would be enough to make them a laughingstock. The purpose of their trip was naturally to destroy the marriage contract. As long as the marriage contract was destroyed, naturally, no one would know about the marriage contract between the Glen family and the Zhuo family. In addition, they would give the Zhuo family some benefits and make the Zhuo family swallow their broken teeth. Then, everything would become unknown. However, Zhuowen writing the letter of divorce in front of everyone had completely disrupted Glen Narcissus' rhythm. Glen Narcissus was very clear that if they really accepted Zhuowen's letter of divorce, then their Glen family's reputation would be destroyed in an instant. Not only had the marriage contract between the Glen family and the Zhuo family been exposed, but their Glen family's proud daughter had been divorced by a small family's disciple. This kind of scandal would greatly damage their Glen family's reputation. Zhuowen, you've got guts. Originally, I wanted to give the Zhuo family some benefits, but you're really too arrogant and stupid. Now I'll give you one more chance. Hand over the marriage contract and break one of your arms to atone for your sins. Otherwise, don't blame us for being rude to the Zhuo family. Rip. Glen Narcissus tore the letter of divorce into pieces. Her pretty face was extremely gloomy as she stared at Zhuowen. Her beautiful eyes contained deep anger. Zhuowen's repeated rebuttal had finally made her unable to calm down. When Glen Narcissus' words came out, the faces of Zhuo Xiangding and the rest changed. They did not expect Glen Narcissus to be so oppressive. Haha! Your Glen family is really impressive. When you first came, our Zhuo family treated you well, but you were high and mighty and looked at us coldly. When you came, you immediately asked for the marriage contract. I'm afraid you want to destroy it, right? Then I'd like to ask you, does this marriage contract have Glen Haohai's fingerprint? As he spoke, Zhuowen unfolded the marriage contract. There were 2 fingerprint marks at the bottom of the contract. These 2 fingerprint marks belonged to Zhuo Xiaotian and Glen Haohai. Glen Narcissus' expression was cold as she said coldly, "It's indeed my father's fingerprint, but so what? Do you think your Zhuo family is worthy of our Glen family? Let me tell you, that's just a toad lusting after a swan's meat. Do you really think that our Zhuo family cares about your Glen family? I just said that I don't really like this marriage contract, so why can't we cancel it? Isn't this your goal? Since that's the case, why don't you accept the letter of divorce?" Zhuowen stared straight at Glen Narcissus as he questioned coldly. The moment these words were said, Glen Daffodil was immediately speechless. Zhuowen was right. They had come to annul the engagement. Zhuowen was also very cooperative. However, in the form of a letter of divorce, it would clearly cause the Glen family to lose face. Glen Daffodil could not accept this no matter what. Letter of divorce? Zhuowen, do you think you have the right to write a letter of divorce? Sister Baihe is a proud daughter of the heavens and an existence in the top 10 of the Qing Huang leaderboard. She's like a fairy. Do you think a lowly ant like you has the right to divorce Sister Baihe? I'm indeed here to cancel the marriage contract. This isn't a glorious matter, so we don't need the letter of divorce. We just need to destroy the marriage contract. Then, our Glen family and your Zhuo family will be even, Glen Narcissus said calmly. This is indeed not a glorious matter. You keep saying that you want to cancel the marriage contract. Our Zhuo family has already given you enough respect. We didn't resist shamelessly, but have you ever given our Zhuo family any respect? Don't even think about destroying the marriage contract. Since you want to cancel the marriage contract, then accept my letter of divorce. Zhuowen's heart was filled with cold laughter. He had also faintly guessed the thoughts of the Grand Daffodil. It was likely that they wanted to settle the marriage privately. As long as the marriage contract was destroyed, the marriage contract between the Zhuo and Grand Daffodil could be treated as if it had never happened. Chapter 6:17. Explode instantly, the atmosphere in the hall became strange. Zhuo Xiangding and the rest did not interrupt. They only stared at Zhuowen. Now that Zhuowen was the backbone of the Zhuo family, they would listen to everything Zhuowen said. Sitting in the main seat, Glen Daffodil frowned. She did not expect Zhuowen to be so stubborn. He would rather offend the Glen family than take out the marriage certificate. If they wanted to break the engagement, they could only accept the divorce certificate. However, what kind of status did the Glen family have? What kind of genius was the Glen Lily? If word got out that the Grand Lily was divorced by this nameless brat, the Grand family would lose all their face. If they accepted the divorce certificate, the Glen family would lose all face. If they did not accept it, they could only form a marriage alliance with the Zhuo family, but it would not be a good match. No matter which one it was, Glen Daffodil was unable to accept it. The best way was naturally to completely destroy the marriage contract and let this old matter of the past completely lose its proof. Originally, I wanted to settle this matter peacefully with the Zhuo family. Unfortunately, you do not know what's good for you. The Glen Daffodil shook her head. Her beautiful eyes gradually turned cold. She said to the man in black beside her, "Qin Mu, I'll give you a chance. Snatch the marriage certificate from this kid. Then, you can do whatever you want with him." When Qin Mu heard this, he was stunned at first. Then, he was pleasantly surprised. His gaze landed on Juan and he laughed evilly. Little bastard, I really don't know where you got the confidence to reject the second lady's condition. However, this is not important. Anyway, you'll be dead soon. Previously, Juan had humiliated him in front of everyone. Qin Mu had already secretly wanted to kill Juan. Now that he had received the Glen Daffodil's permission, how could Qin Mu not be surprised? This time, he would definitely let this little bastard live a life worse than death. Miss Glen, you? Zhuo Xiangding's face darkened. He wanted to stand up and attack. Unfortunately, the elder standing behind the Glen Daffodil coldly snorted. A terrifying aura burst out from his body. Instantly, the entire hall was enveloped by a vast aura. Creak! The surrounding tables and chairs were all smashed into dust by this aura. Zhuo Xiangding and the others all knelt down on one knee, their faces filled with shock and anger as they trembled. This old man's aura was too terrifying. It was not something they could resist. The head of the Zhuo family. As you can see, I originally wanted to settle this matter peacefully with your Zhuo family. Unfortunately, your grandson doesn't know what's good for him, so it's time to teach him a lesson, Glen Daffodil said indifferently. Boom! The moment the old man's aura erupted, another terrifying pressure swept over from the front of the hall. Juan, who was standing at the end, lightly patted the green coffin on his back. In an instant, 1/3 of the lid opened, and a terrifying pressure that had reached his critical point surged out. It was like a protective shield that blocked the terrifying aura released by the old man. The moment the pressure of the green coffin was released, Zhuo Xiangding and the rest all felt their bodies relax. They all stood up and came behind Juan, staring at Glen Narcissus and the other three in the main seat of the hall with fear. Grandfather, leave first. This is not a place where you can stay, Juan said softly as he tilted his head slightly. Yes, Juan, you have to be careful. The Glen family has bullied our Zhuo family. Even if our Zhuo family is far inferior to the Glen family, we will not back down because of this. If you can't block it, run for your life. Although our cultivation is not strong, if we fight with our lives on the line, we can still take out one of you. After Zhuo Xiangding finished speaking, he led the others out of the hall. Zhuowen's strength was far superior to theirs. Previously, Zhuowen's performance in the Marquis of Baichuan's residence had completely stunned everyone. Among Glen Narcissus and the other three, the white-haired old man's strength was the most terrifying. From the aura he released, this old man's strength should be about the same as the black-robed old man from the Marquis of Baichuan's residence. However, he was slightly weaker than the white-robed old man. He should be around the early stage of the ultimate seven-wheel emperor realm. What? He actually blocked Elder Shi's aura. This kid. When Elder Shi's aura was completely blocked by the pressure of the green coffin, shock appeared on the faces of Glen Narcissus and the others. They knew very well just how terrifying Elder Shi's strength was. He was an initial stage 7 chakra emperor. Although such an existence was not rare in the Glen family, in a low-level city like Rattan Armor City, he was considered a rare existence. It was even impossible for such an expert to exist. However, Elder Shi's terrifying aura had been blocked. Moreover, it was blocked by Juan, whom they looked down on. This drastic contrast immediately made Glen Narcissus' face turn extremely ugly. Elder Shi, what's going on? Is this kid's strength so strong that he can actually release such a terrifying aura? Glen Narcissus asked Elder Shi in a low voice. Elder Shi narrowed his eyes and immediately noticed the green coffin behind Juan that had been opened by a third. He said in a low voice, "This aura is not released by this kid. It's released by the strange green coffin behind him. I'm afraid that there's an extremely terrifying creature sealed in that green coffin." It's that strange green coffin? Looks like this Juan has had a fortuitous encounter. He actually has such a treasure on him, Glen Narcissus said coldly as her beautiful eyes narrowed. I can block this aura. This kid's aura is not strong. He should be around the level of an ultimate first-wheel emperor. Qin Mu, quickly finish him off. Elder Shi said indifferently. Zhuowen had the divine aura concealment jade that Lu Hantian had given him. Not only could this item hide the true aura of a soul treasure, it could even hide the aura of Zhuowen's cultivation to an extremely weak level. If one's strength had not reached Lu Hantian's level, it would probably be very difficult to see through Zhuowen's true aura under the divine aura concealment jade. The fear on Qin Mu's face slowly receded. The terrifying aura that had surged out from Zhuowen had given even him a fright. He had thought that Zhuowen's cultivation was extremely terrifying. Now that he had heard Elder Shi's explanation, he naturally felt much more at ease. He said coldly, "A little bastard from a mere low-level city has actually reached the ultimate emperor realm. Looks like you've had quite a few fortuitous encounters. It's a pity that you're only at the first-wheel emperor realm. It's nothing in front of me. Are you done with your nonsense? Since you've said enough, then stop barking like a dog. Come and bite me," Zhuowen said coldly with a smirk. "What? You little bastard. Very good. You've angered me time and time again. I'll definitely kill you." The veins on Qin Mu's forehead bulged as he spat out the word kill. The aura of a mid-stage ultimate emperor realm cultivator completely surged out as he arrived above Zhuowen in an instant. His right hand formed into a claw and pressed down. Instantly, the surrounding yuan qi swept out, forming a giant claw that was dozens of feet long as it descended towards Zhuowen's head. Die. How laughable. Zhuowen smiled coldly. He gently raised his right hand and a golden light surged out, directly meeting the giant claw in the sky. He actually wanted to use his physical body to fight it. What a reckless little bastard. You actually dare to use your physical body to take my full force attack. You're simply courting death. Qin Mu laughed, the mocking smile on his face growing even more intense. Crack. A clear sound appeared and the mocking smile on Qin Mu's face immediately froze. His pupils shrunk to the size of a needle. He saw that Zhuowen's simple and unadorned punch was not only completely unharmed when it smashed onto the huge claw. Instead, the huge claw shattered inch by inch like a glass plate. The golden light flashed through the air and instantly reached Qin Mu's chest. Then, Qin Mu felt a sharp pain in his chest and blood spurted out of his mouth. He fell to the ground like a withered leaf, causing the ground to crack and turn into a giant crater. Qin Mu had actually been defeated in one move. What? How is this brat so strong? Qin Mu was defeated in one move? Grand Lily clenched her fist. Her beautiful eyes narrowed as she exclaimed in a low voice. At this moment, Qin Mu was lying in the crater, twitching continuously like a dead dog. He even spat out white foam from his mouth and his eyes rolled back. His entire body was extremely weak. Die. Zhuowen was expressionless. He leaped up and his body sank. It was as if Mount Tai was pressing down on him, forming a 1,000-pound drop. His knees that were covered in golden light directly landed on Qin Mu, who was in the crater. The strength that Zhuowen had used in this attack was several times more terrifying than the previous one. If Qin Mu was hit, he would definitely die. Qin Mu, who was in the crater, also felt the dazzling figure in the sky. His eyes were already filled with fear. He had not expected that this young man, who he had never thought highly of, would actually possess such terrifying strength. Swoosh! A yellow shadow flashed past and Qin Mu, who was twitching on the ground, was immediately taken away by this yellow shadow. Rumble! Zhuowen landed directly on the ground. Golden light flickered and a powerful force accompanied the golden light swept out with Zhuowen as the epicenter. It turned into a spiral hurricane and countless rocks flew in all directions like a meteor shower. The entire hall finally collapsed completely under this force and turned into ruins. Under the protection of Old Shi, the Gland Daffodil instantly left the hall. The expression of the elegant yellow-clothed young man, who was holding a folding fan and had rescued Qin Mu, changed slightly. He also hurriedly left the hall. On the empty ground outside the hall, Grand Lily and the other 3 people landed miserably on the ground. As for the Joie family's huge guest hall, it instantly collapsed and turned into ruins. This brat. Why is he so terrifying? Is he really a disciple of a small family in a low-grade city? The young man in yellow held Chin Mu and said with a fearful expression. Hearing this, the pretty face of the great Glen Daffodil by the side immediately became a little ugly. She also did not expect that such a turning point would occur. Originally, as far as she was concerned, this trip to the Joie clan to annul the engagement should be extremely smooth. But she never imagined that Joie one who appeared out of nowhere would actually be so difficult to deal with, to the point that even Chin Mu was defeated in a single move. Chin Mu was the number 1 genius of the Chin family, which was a subsidiary family of the Grand Lily. His strength had reached the middle stage of the 5-wheel ultimate emperor realm. In the area that the Grand Lily controlled, he was rather famous. Grand Lily's cultivation was on par with Chin Mu's. Even Chin Mu had been defeated so thoroughly. If she were to face this brat, the result would be self-evident. Rumble! An earth-shattering sound was heard. In the ruins of the hall, a golden figure suddenly broke out. Accompanied by countless rocks, he walked towards the empty ground step by step. Chapter 6:18. 4 Symbols Roulette. At this moment, Zhuowen carried the green coffin on his back. His body glowed with golden light as he walked step by step towards the open space. A terrifying pressure flowed out from the green coffin. The surrounding rocks floated up and turned into a sandstorm. As he walked slowly towards the open space, Zhuowen raised his head and stared at Grand Narcissus and the others. He gently opened the green coffin on his back. His right hand suddenly stopped, and the green coffin stood on the ground like a giant stone tablet. With the green coffin as the center, the terrifying pressure spread out in all directions in the form of a ring. The strength of the pressure was actually much stronger than before. Glen Narcissus and the other 3's faces changed again. Grand Narcissus' face paled slightly, but she was still able to maintain her composure. She turned to Elder Shur and said, "Elder Shur, what's his cultivation level?" Peak of the ultimate emperor stage. At this moment, Elder Shur's wrinkled face was filled with a grave expression. When Zhuowen had defeated Chin Mu with a single move, Elder Shur had sensed the aura that had flowed out from Zhuowen's body. Zhuowen's aura had actually reached the peak of the ultimate 5-wheel emperor realm. Hearing this, Glen Daffodil could not help but be stunned. She had never imagined that Zhuowen's strength would actually reach the peak of the ultimate 5-wheel emperor realm. This person looked to be at most 19 years old. To be able to reach such a cultivation level at such an age, he could be considered a genius even in the imperial capital. How is this possible? How could the Joie family nurture a genius with such a cultivation level? Grand Narcissus muttered to herself in disbelief. Second Miss, this person's talent is very strong. Although he's not as strong as First Miss, his talent is probably close to hers. Elder Shur shook his head and sighed. So what if this person's talent is good? A peak of the ultimate emperor stage is nothing in front of Sister Baiha. How can this person be worthy of Sister Baiha? Grand Narcissus bit her cherry lips and said coldly. The talent and strength that Zhuowen displayed were indeed not bad. Unfortunately, he was too far from Grand Narcissus. How could he be worthy of her Sister Baiha? In addition, this person was born lowly. He had no right to be compared to the Grand Narcissus. Furthermore, she had Elder Shur by her side. Zhuowen, a mere peak of the ultimate emperor stage, could not do anything to the 4 of them. Peak ultimate emperor realm? Second Young Miss, why don't you let me have a go at this kid? When he saw that Zhuowen's strength was at the peak of the ultimate 5-wheel emperor realm, the yellow-robed youth, who had been full of fear, heaved a sigh of relief. His strength had already reached the level of a half-step 6-wheel ultimate emperor. His strength was even above that of a peak 5-wheel ultimate emperor. If it wasn't for the interference of Zhuowen's green coffin, he was confident that he could defeat Zhuowen. Moreover, he also wanted to perform well in front of the Glen Daffodil. The Glen Daffodil's position in the Glen family was not low. If he was promoted by her, his future would be worry-free. Mu Lin, you have to be careful. I'm afraid this kid isn't simple. This old man will help you offset the pressure released by the green coffin. Old Shi nodded. Qin Mu couldn't compare to Mu Lin. He was an existence who was half a step into the ultimate six-wheel emperor realm. His strength was much stronger than Qin Mu's. Elder Shi had some confidence in Mu Lin. The yellow-robed Mu Lin closed his fan and nodded. Then, he stepped forward and faced the youth beside the green coffin. He said, Zhuowen, I think you're a smart person. The strength of the Glen family isn't something you can imagine. If you don't want to bring disaster to your Zhuo family, I think it's best for you to bind your arms and follow us back to the Glen family. You don't have to worry about us harming you. As long as you hand over the marriage contract and follow us back to the Glen family, with your talent and strength, I'm afraid the Glen family will put you in an important position. Mu Lin's tone was gentle and refined. He had a smile on his face and gave people a feeling of a spring breeze. At first glance, people would have a good impression of him. However, Zhuowen didn't fall for it. He snorted coldly and said, Hand over the marriage contract, bind my arms, and follow you back to the Glen family? I think there's something wrong with your head. Who do you think you are? You actually want me to bind my arms and follow you back? If I really do that, won't my life be completely in your hands? Before you speak, you'd better use your brain. Don't show off your high and mighty attitude in front of me. You don't know how laughable and stupid it is in my eyes. The smile on Mu Lin's face froze and his eyes narrowed. This Zhuowen was really rude. No matter how good Mu Lin's temper was, he couldn't help but feel annoyed. If that's the case, then don't blame me for not showing mercy. Mu Lin sneered and stomped his foot. The aura of a half-step six-wheel ultimate emperor flowed out violently. His clothes and hair fluttered in the wind. He, who was originally suave and elegant, looked even more charming and graceful at this moment. Will you die if you don't show off? Zhuowen sneered. He formed a seal with both hands and two pairs of thunder wings burst out from his back. The thunder wings opened and closed. Zhuowen turned into lightning and flashed behind Mu Lin in an instant. His right fist, which was covered in golden light, shuttled through space and punched toward Mu Lin's back. So fast. Mu Lin's expression changed drastically. He didn't expect Zhuowen to be so fast. He didn't even notice that Zhuowen had flashed behind him. 4 symbols roulette. Block it for me. Although he was shocked, Mu Lin's reaction wasn't slow. He instantly took out a roulette spiritual treasure and formed a seal with his right hand. Suddenly, an earth-shattering elephant's roar rolled out like thunder and spread throughout the entire area. Then, a golden spinning roulette appeared behind Mu Lin. 4 illusory golden elephants appeared around the roulette and stood in 4 different directions, maintaining the roulette's rotation. Boom! The moment Mu Lin took out the 4 symbols roulette, Zhuowen's golden fist arrived as expected. It instantly reached the roulette and the two collided. Golden light burst out in all directions, as if the sun had exploded. It was dazzling and blinding. As the golden light flashed, Zhuowen's fist seemed to have fallen into a swamp and actually froze. Humph! Zhuowen, the 4 symbols roulette is a top-grade Earth-rank spiritual treasure. Do you think you can break this spiritual treasure by relying on your physical strength? Mu Lin sneered under the 4 symbols roulette. I can't break it? Zhuowen sneered. The muscles on his right arm swelled, and the golden light in his body soared to a terrifying level. Nirvana of the Great Sun, Nirvana! With a low roar, the golden light on the surface of Zhuowen's body reached its peak and turned into a golden pillar that soared into the sky. Suddenly, in the void behind Zhuowen, a giant that was close to 1,000 feet tall stepped out and slammed its huge palm on the 4 symbols roulette. Crack! A crisp sound rang out. Under Mu Lin's horrified gaze, the 4 symbols roulette crumbled inch by inch and turned into fine powder. How is this possible? This guy's physical body can actually destroy the 4 symbols roulette. This guy. The moment the 4 symbols roulette shattered, this was the only thought in Mu Lin's mind. Then, Zhuowen's fist arrived as expected and slammed heavily on his chest. The sound of bones cracking rang out and Mu Lin fell miserably at the feet of Glen Daffodil and Elder Shur. What a terrifying physical body! Elder Shur's pupils shrank as he stared deeply at Zhuowen, who was covered in golden light. After Mu Lin was defeated, Zhuowen's gaze turned slightly and landed on Glen Daffodil and Elder Shur. He said indifferently, "Marriage certificate. Do you still want it?" Glen Daffodil's pretty face turned pale. She stared deeply at Zhuowen and said to Elder Shur, "Elder Shur, this guy is too presumptuous. Capture him for me. He injured Qin Mu and Mu Lin. If we don't capture him, where will our Glen family's prestige go?" Second Miss, this guy's talent is extremely terrifying. We don't need to offend him too much. Elder Shur frowned slightly. He could see that Zhuowen's potential was extremely terrifying. If this guy was given a certain amount of time, it was not impossible for his strength to catch up to Glen Daffodil. He felt that it was not worth offending Zhuowen too much. Glen Daffodil said coldly, "Elder Shur, my father has instructed you to listen to me this time. Don't tell me you want to go against my father's wishes?" Hearing this, Elder Shur sighed slightly. He could only walk towards Zhuowen and said indifferently, "Zhuowen, your talent is not bad. It's a pity that you have shown off your abilities. This kind of character is not beneficial to your future development. You can't afford to offend the Glen family." "Showing off my abilities? Don't tell me that I have to swallow my pride when I'm being oppressed? Do I have to break my teeth and swallow it? If I'm so cowardly in martial arts, how can I become a strong person?" Zhuowen sneered. "I'm not going to argue with you. Since you're so stubborn, I can only capture you and bring you back to the Glen family. When the time comes, the head of the family will punish you." Elder Shur shook his head. The aura in his body once again expanded by a few times. His robes fluttered in the wind and actually faintly suppressed the pressure of green coffin. An initial stage, 7-wheel Emperor Realm martial artist. I want to have a good look at him. Looking at the expanding aura of Elder Shur, Zhuowen exuded an extremely sharp battle intent. This time, his cultivation, spear intent, and nirvana of the Great Sun had all improved. It might be a little difficult for him to face off against an initial stage, 7-wheel Emperor Realm martial artist, but he might be able to put up a fight. Whoosh! Elder Shur was as immovable as a mountain, but as swift as lightning. He instantly appeared above Zhuowen. His veined claw stretched out and pressed towards Zhuowen's forehead. Nirvana of the Great Sun, death! With a low roar, Zhuowen was not to be outdone. He once again released the first level of Nirvana of the Great Sun, death. In the void behind him, the giant stepped forward again. Countless golden flames enveloped Zhuowen. The giant waved its golden fist and punched at Elder Shur. "Humph! You're just a mantis trying to stop a chariot." Elder Shur snorted coldly. The claw that was pressing down suddenly changed and immediately met the golden giant. The tiny claw and the giant fist collided, and endless waves of air swirled in the air. Bang! The golden giant roared and exploded into countless golden lights. However, Elder Shur was not harmed at all. Thump! 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 Zhuowen groaned and retreated continuously. The golden light on the surface of his body gradually dimmed, and even showed signs of cracking. As expected of an ultimate stage, 7-wheel Emperor Realm martial artist, the Nirvana of the Great Sun's death can't do any damage to him at all, Zhuowen muttered to himself in a serious tone. "Zhuowen, even your strongest physical body can't stop me. Now you'd better surrender obediently. Don't force me to kill you, Elder Shur said indifferently as he slowly walked towards Zhuowen. Ha ha! You said my strongest physical body is my strongest physical body? I'm afraid you're wrong. My strongest physical body is not my strongest physical body, but… Clang. Chapter 6:19. Terrifying spear intent. Elder Shur's expression froze. After using the nirvana of the Great Sun, Zhuowen's strength was comparable to an ordinary six-chakra emperor. However, Zhuowen still said that his physical strength was not his forte. Spear techniques? Unfortunately, so what if your spear techniques are impressive? Your strength is at most comparable to an ultimate six-chakra emperor. However, I am at the early stage of the ultimate seven-chakra emperor realm. I am not someone you can contend against. Elder Shur shook his head. He took a step forward and his body moved. In an instant, he was above Zhuowen's head. His withered, branch-like palm pressed down, and a terrifying palm print descended from the void. With Elder Shur's help, this kid will definitely be captured. A mere Zhuo family disciple actually dares to reject the Grand Family's offer. He is simply an ant trying to shake a tree. He overestimates himself. The Grand Narcissus lips curled up slightly. Her beautiful face was filled with coldness. Zhuowen's strength was indeed beyond her expectations. However, Elder Shur was an ultimate seven-chakra Emperor realm expert. He was much stronger than Zhuowen. Capturing this Zhuowen would be an easy task. Looking at the huge palm print descending from the sky, Zhuowen's expression was extremely grave. Although Elder Shur was slightly weaker than Elder He from the Marquis of Baichuan's residence, he was still an ultimate seven-chakra Emperor realm expert. Back then, Zhuowen had relied on Lu Hantian's domineering spear intent to finally kill Elder He. Now, Zhuowen did not have Lu Hantian's spear intent anymore. Fortunately, in the process of Zhuowen and Guosheng's exchange of pointers, Zhuowen had comprehended the next level of spear intent. At this time, his strength had already doubled. Although it was unlikely that he could defeat Old Shur, he could still barely resist him. This spear has a soul. It is called spear intent, Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. He was as immovable as a mountain. However, when he moved like a thunderbolt. He pulled out his bone spear and straightened his back like a spear. A cold light swept out from the tip of the spear. A mysterious concept exploded. The space around Zhuowen seemed to freeze as a surge of sharp spear intent soared into the sky. Clang! Zhuowen moved. With a swing of his bone spear, it pierced through space and instantly arrived above the palm imprint. The will of the long spear erupted, transforming into numerous spear shadows in the void. Instantly, countless terrifying explosions spread out, causing the surrounding space to collapse layer by layer. Rumble! Suddenly, the spear shadow and the palm print exploded at the same time. The earth-shattering explosion spread through the void and then disappeared into the void. What? He actually blocked Old Shur's attack. How did this kid do it? Glen Narcissus' beautiful eyes widened as she muttered to herself in disbelief. Old Shur's eyes narrowed slightly as a grave expression finally appeared on his wrinkled face. He said in surprise, "This is spear intent? Moreover, it is far beyond the elementary level of spear intent. Could it be that your spear intent has reached the next level?" Old Shur finally understood why Zhuowen said that he was most proficient in spear technique. It turned out that this kid had actually comprehended the illusory concept of power. Moreover, it was the extremely overbearing spear intent. This kid was truly terrifying. Spear intent? How could this be? How could this Zhuowen possibly comprehend the concept of spear intent? Once Old Shur's words came out, Glen Narcissus, who was not far away, was finally shocked. Their Glen family was one of the 5 big families of the imperial capital county. Naturally, they were much more clear about the concept of power than ordinary warriors. It could be said that warriors who could comprehend the concept of power were all peerless talents and terrifying monstrous geniuses with boundless prospects. Such geniuses were rare even in the imperial capital county. Among the younger generation of the Glen family, the only one who could comprehend the concept of power was Glen Lily. As for the other younger generation of the Glen family, they had not succeeded in comprehending the concept of power. It could be seen how difficult it was to comprehend the concept of power. However, Juowen, who she looked down upon from a small family, had not only comprehended the concept of power, but also the extremely overbearing spear intent. Moreover, his spear intent had even reached the next level. She was very clear about how terrifying warriors who could comprehend the concept of power were. Such monstrous geniuses were basically invincible among those of the same level. They were terrifying existences who could challenge those of a higher level at will. Perhaps their cultivation was not very high, but when they fought, they were far more powerful than ordinary warriors. At this moment, Juowen's fighting spirit was soaring. He wanted to test if he, who had mastered the next level of spear intent, could have the power to fight against an initial 7-wheel ultimate king realm warrior. Ha ha! Again. With a loud laugh, Juowen's aura was like a rainbow. The spear intent around him surged and a cold light overflowed. With the help of 2 pairs of thunder wings, Juowen arrived in front of Old Shur in an instant. The bone spear shuttled through the void and instantly swept towards Old Shur with a cold light. Old Shur's expression changed slightly. With a low roar, he stretched out his claws again. A huge amount of power gathered in his claws, like an indestructible weapon, instantly blocking the terrifying spear light that pierced towards him. Clang! 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 The sound of metal clashing instantly surged in this area like countless firecrackers, almost shaking the clouds in the sky. "Eat my spear again!" Juowen roared and moved his spear. The momentum of the bone spear changed. Like a poisonous snake, it swept out at a tricky angle and sealed all the major acupoints on Old Shur's body. Every strike was fatal. Old Shur snorted coldly. The speed of his claws soared to the extreme. Juowen's terrifying spear momentum was instantly blocked by him. At the same time, his left hand, which was ready to attack, suddenly slammed out towards Juowen's chest. The corners of Juowen's mouth curled up slightly. The seal in his hands changed again. The lightning on his back suddenly surged violently. Old Shur was surprised to find that another pair of thunder wings had grown out of the 2 pairs of thunder wings on Juowen's back. The third pair of lightning wings that had suddenly appeared were dozens of feet wide. Lightning flashed and an illusory figure of a dragon appeared. Numerous deafening dragon roars continuously resounded over the place. Swoosh! In an instant, Juowen's speed increased by several times. He immediately dodged Old Shur's left palm, which was ready to attack. Lightning flashed and he stopped more than 10 meters away. The third pair of thunder wings was naturally the thunder dragon wings. Juowen had obtained it from the blood demon legacy. The cultivation of the thunder dragon wings was much more difficult than the thunder serpent wings and thunder serpent wings. Even with Juowen's extraordinary comprehension, it took him nearly 3 months to grasp the basics of this technique. At this moment, facing an expert like Old Shur, Juowen naturally did not hold back and used the thunder dragon wings. Holding the bone spear in his hand, 3 pairs of thunder wings on his back, lightning flashed, spear intent revolved around him, and his black hair danced in the wind. At this moment, Juowen quietly stood in the air. His rainbow-like aura was like a god descending to the mortal world. What a terrifying brat! Looking at the peerless youth in front of him, Old Shur's gaze was complicated. He could feel that this brat was not an ordinary person. Again, Juowen's clear voice resounded between heaven and earth. Once again, he turned into lightning and clashed with Old Shur, whose robes were fluttering in the wind. Suddenly, a series of explosions resounded in the air. Ring-shaped waves of air spread out in all directions. The aftermath spread out and distorted the space around them. The 2 of them fought from the sky to the ground, and from the ground to the sky. The terrifying aftermath of the battle constantly spread out and exploded in the sky above Rattan Armor City. It was as if countless fireworks were sprinkling down from the sky. Zhuowen's spear intent was pushed to the extreme. Originally, Zhuowen was completely at a disadvantage against Old Shur. He had completely relied on the speed of the Thunder Dragon wings to avoid Old Shur's terrifying attacks. However, as the battle heated up, Zhuowen became more and more courageous. His terrifying spear intent also became sharper in the process of the battle. It was as if the originally rusty blade had become sharper and easier to wield under constant polishing. After all, Zhuowen had mastered the advanced spear intent. He was not particularly proficient with it. However, as he continued to fight with Old Shur, Zhuowen became more and more proficient with this newly mastered spear intent. He was able to wield it more and more smoothly. Naturally, the power of his spear intent was constantly multiplying like a rocket. The more Old Shur fought, the more frightened he became. He could see that Zhuowen was using him as a whetstone. He could clearly feel that Zhuowen's spear intent was becoming more and more unstoppable. It was becoming more and more easy to handle. This Zhuowen can't even take down Old Shur? In the open space, Glen Daffodil's cherry lips were slightly open. Looking at the imposing young man, her beautiful eyes were already filled with shock. This Zhuowen's performance had exceeded her expectations time and time again. She really did not know how to express her feelings at this moment. At this moment, Qin Mu and Mu Lin, who were squinting slightly, stood beside Glen Daffodil while supporting each other. The two of them looked at each other and revealed a bitter expression. They had never imagined that Zhuowen's strength would be so strong. Even more so, they had not expected him to have comprehended the terrifying spear intent. Now, even Old Shur, who was at the initial stage of the Seven-Wheel Emperor realm, could not completely suppress this young man. What kind of freak is this? How did a family from a small low-level city cultivate such a terrifying monster? In fact, the two of them were even more puzzled. They could not imagine how Zhuowen, who was born in such a lowly place, had cultivated to such a terrifying level. This young man's talent was actually comparable to the top geniuses of the imperial city. Boom! Explosions sounded in the sky. Then, the two figures suddenly separated and retreated more than 10 meters away. They stared at each other from afar. Zhuowen, you are very strong. This time, we have miscalculated. We do not want the marriage certificate. Let us leave here, Old Shur said with a gloomy expression. Zhuowen's strength had greatly exceeded his expectations. Although he could suppress Zhuowen in battle, Zhuowen had the Thunder Dragon wings and was too fast. Even he could not catch up with Zhuowen. In addition to that terrifying spear intent, Old Shur really could not do anything to Zhuowen. Whoosh! Zhuowen slowly descended and stood on the green coffin in the open space. He looked down at Glen Daffodil, who was not far away, and said indifferently, "Didn't you come here to cancel the marriage? This time, naturally, I will not let you return disappointed. Accept my letter of divorce and leave Rattan Armor City." What? Zhuowen, what did you say? You actually want us to accept the letter of divorce? Don't even think about it, Glen Daffodil said coldly with a gloomy expression. Boom. Chapter 620. Grand Oceanden's cold light flickered as Grand Narcissus' beautiful eyes narrowed. Immediately, she felt a chill on her neck. Looking at the cold and indifferent young man in front of her, Grand Narcissus' throat trembled as she said in a trembling voice, "Zhuowen, you better not mess around. I'm the second miss of the Grand family." In the sky, Old Shur's expression changed. With the lightning wings, Zhuowen's speed was too fast. Although his strength was above Zhuowen's in terms of speed, Zhuowen was much faster than him. Zhuowen, you're too bold to point your spear at the second Mississippi. Do you know what you're doing? Qin Mu and Mu Lin's expressions changed when they saw Grand Narcissus being pointed at by the bone spear. They both released their attacks to stop Zhuowen. You two trash, get out of my way! Zhuowen shouted coldly. He lifted Grand Narcissus with his left hand and swung the bone spear with his right hand. Qin Mu and Mu Lin were like withered leaves as they flew back with blood spurting out of their mouth. Zhuowen, let go of Miss Narcissus. You're too bold. Elder Shi shouted and descended from the sky, aiming directly at Zhuowen's head. His aura was like a dragon and his might was like a tiger. Zhuowen's threat of the Gland Daffodil had completely angered Elder Shi. Feeling the terrifying pressure from above, Zhuowen's expression changed. A powerful force gushed out and completely suppressed Grand Narcissus, who was still struggling. 3 pairs of lightning wings unfolded on his back, and he instantly dodged Old Shi's attack. Zhuowen stepped on the air and tapped on the green coffin. He said coldly, "If I were you, I wouldn't act rashly because the spear in my hand is definitely faster than yours. I can definitely kill this woman before you arrive." As he spoke, Zhuowen tightened his grip on the bone spear in his hand. The cold spear tip was placed horizontally on Glen Narcissus' spotlessly white neck. Traces of coldness caused Glen Narcissus' delicate body to stiffen, not daring to move in the slightest. She was truly afraid that Zhuowen would act recklessly and end her. Hearing this, Elder Shi froze and said coldly, "What do you want to let Second Miss go? Your grand family is one of the 5 great families of the Imperial City. Our Zhuo family is indeed out of our league. Of course, I have no interest in forming a marriage alliance with your grand family. Therefore, you must accept my letter of divorce. Otherwise, I'm afraid that the second daughter of the grand family will not be able to walk out of the Zhuo family's door." Once again tightening his grip on the bone spear, Zhuowen's voice became incomparably cold as 10,000-year-old profound ice. "What do you think? The second daughter of the Grant family." At this moment, Glen Daffodil was so scared that her face turned pale. She had not expected Zhuowen to be so daring and his strength to be so terrifying. All of this had far exceeded her expectations. "Zhuowen, what you did was very unwise. We no longer intend to take back the marriage certificate. Why are you still forcing us to accept the letter of divorce?" Elder Shi's face darkened slightly. "Aggressive? I would like to ask, who was the one who forced me to hand over the marriage certificate in the first place? Who was the one who wanted to cripple my cultivation and bring me back to the grand family? Who was the one who was so overbearing, high and mighty, and used the grand family to pressure our Zhuo family? Let me tell you, although our Zhuo family is an insignificant small family, it is not without dignity and status. Although your grand family is powerful, our Zhuo family is not your grand family's servant. If you provoke us, even if we die, we will bite off a piece of your grand family's flesh." Once these words were spoken, Elder Shi immediately fell silent. What Zhuowen said was right. At the beginning, they were indeed the ones who were overbearing. They were even the ones who started the fight. Now, they were saying that Zhuowen was being overbearing. It was indeed somewhat laughable. Either accept the letter of divorce or die. Zhuowen stared coldly at Glen Daffodil in his hand. Every word was like a gem. His tone was cold and murderous. Glen Daffodil's delicate body trembled. She gritted her teeth and said, "Zhuowen, you are the one who has pushed me too far. You will regret it." As she spoke, Glen Daffodil had unknowingly taken out a golden talisman and immediately crushed it. In an instant, a golden light shone brightly and a terrifying aura surged out. Zhuowen's expression changed greatly. He could not help but retreat and let go of Glen Daffodil. Teleportation talisman? Zhuowen recognized the talisman that Glen Daffodil crushed. This talisman was exactly the same as the one that Lu Hantian had given him. He knew that this was definitely a teleportation talisman that a powerhouse had left for Glen Daffodil. Damn it! Could it be the head of the grand family, Grand Haohai? Slowly retreating to the side of the green coffin, Zhuowen secretly took out Lu Hantian's teleportation talisman. He knew that if it was really Grand Haohai, he could only summon Lu Hantian. Otherwise, with his strength, it would be like hitting a rock with an egg. The golden light faded and a majestic figure stepped out from the black hole in the void. With a stomp of his foot, he landed directly beside Glen Daffodil. A supreme and terrifying aura suddenly burst out from this majestic figure. This person could actually cause the surrounding space to distort and collapse with just a raise of his hand. It was too terrifying. This person was tall and slender, with eyes as bright as stars, long eyebrows that reached his temples, and a smile on the corner of his mouth. His attitude was free and easy, and he had a unique elegance. He seemed to be an otherworldly person. However, the aura that was released from the surface of his body was extremely terrifying. It was as if countless suns, moons, and stars were falling for him. Daffodil, why did you use a teleportation talisman? This is your family? As soon as this middle-aged man with an elegant temperament appeared here, a trace of doubt appeared on his handsome face. Father, I was almost killed by this little bastard called Zhuowen. Glen Daffodil immediately threw herself into the middle-aged man's arms. Her beautiful eyes were filled with grievances. Greetings, family head. Elder Shi, Qin Mu, and Mu Lin immediately came to the middle-aged man's side respectfully. Their faces were filled with reverence. Elder Shi, what exactly happened? The middle-aged man narrowed his eyes and looked at the aggrieved Glen Daffodil in his arms. He asked coldly. Elder Shi sighed. He had no choice but to tell Zhuowen everything that had happened. Elder Shi was rather upright. He didn't add any details to smear Zhuowen's reputation. Instead, he told the truth. Qin Mu and Mu Lin were both defeated? Even you can't do anything to Zhuowen? When the middle-aged man heard this, he raised his eyebrows and looked at the young man beside the green coffin, not far away in surprise. At this moment, Zhuowen's breathing was rapid as he stared at the middle-aged man. He knew that this middle-aged man should be the family head of the Glen family, Glen Haohai. At the same time, he was also a good brother of his father, Zhuo Xiaotian. You are Zhuowen? Xiaotian's son? Glen Haohai looked up and down at Zhuowen. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth as he said softly. Zhuowen nodded and said in a deep voice, I heard from my grandfather that you were a good brother of my father. Then, you should know why my father went missing back then, right? Tell me what happened back then. Zhuowen, you are really bold. Is the family head of the Glen family someone you can talk back to? Quickly kneel down and apologize. Qin Mu suddenly shouted at Zhuowen. Now that he had Glen Haohai's support, Qin Mu became arrogant again. Hatred flashed in his eyes. This Zhuowen had made him lose face. He could not let it go just like that. Shut your dog mouth. No one will think you are mute if you don't speak. If you continue to blabber, I will kill you. Zhuowen abruptly shouted at Qin Mu, his words causing Qin Mu to be stunned. Zhuowen continued staring at Grand Haohai as he continued, What was the secret of that year? Where did my father go? Family head. This kid did not put you in his eyes at all. This little bastard who does not know etiquette must be eliminated to prevent future troubles. Qin Mu said with a gloomy face. Yes, father, this little bastard almost killed me. You must kill him to relieve the hatred in my heart. Glen Daffodil hurriedly agreed. Enough. I will deal with this matter. You two don't have to worry about it. Glen Haohai said indifferently. Instantly, Glen Narcissus and Qin Mu kept quiet out of fear and did not dare to speak. Zhuowen, you are indeed Xiaotian's son. Your talent is not inferior to Xiaotian's back then. In a sense, you are much more outstanding than Xiaotian. Uncle is quite pleased to see you so outstanding. Glen Haohai suddenly said with a pleasant expression. Glen Haohai's attitude immediately confused Glen Narcissus and the other three. Glen Haohai's usual style was not like this. When had he ever treated others with such a pleasant expression? Zhuowen nodded and said with a relaxed expression, Then you can tell me about my father, right? Unexpectedly, Glen Hauhai shook his head and said, "Actually, I am not sure about your father's disappearance. It is useless for you to ask me." "You don't know either?" Zhuowen frowned slightly, but sneered in his heart. This Glen Hauhai must be lying. Back then, Zhuo Xiaotian went to the imperial capital with him, and Zhuo Xiaotian also went missing in the imperial capital. He did not believe that Glen Hauhai did not know why Zhuo Xiaotian went missing. It was just that Zhuowen did not know why Glen Hauhai was lying. "I am also extremely sorry about your father's disappearance. But now that uncle sees how outstanding you are, if Xiaotian knew, he should be extremely pleased. Zhuowen, back then, your father was extremely talented, a monstrous genius, and even awakened a unique dragon soul. As his son, you should have also inherited his intact bloodline, and probably also awakened a dragon soul. This dragon soul is extremely powerful. I don't know if it is convenient for you to reveal it." Speaking of the dragon soul, Glen Hauhai's expression became even more amiable, and his attitude was also extremely gentle, giving people a very good impression. However, Zhuowen felt a chill in his heart. This Glen Hauhai actually knew about the dragon soul, and Glen Hauhai's attitude at this time made Zhuowen faintly feel that something was wrong. This Glen Hauhai seemed to be very eager to know whether he had a dragon soul or not. "Sorry. I don't have a dragon soul. I'm afraid I have to disappoint you." Out of caution, Zhuowen still did not intend to reveal the existence of Xiao He. Although this Glen Hauhai's attitude was very good, and he was also a good brother of his father, the style of the Glen family made him faintly disgusted, so it was impossible for him to reveal the existence of Xiao He to Glen Hauhai, who was meeting for the first time. "I see. That's really a pity. If you had a dragon soul, I'm afraid your future would really be limitless." Glen Hauhai sighed and shook his head regretfully. Boom. Chapter 621. Yu Ding, useless armor. A strong sense of foreboding suddenly surged in Zhuowen's heart. Then, he was shocked to find that Grand Hauhai, who was shaking his head and sighing, had teleported above him. Boom. Grandpa Hauhai grabbed at the air, and Zhuowen was unable to resist at all. Grandpa Hauhai's terrifying pressure acted on Zhuowen, causing him to be unable to move. He could only allow Grandpa Hauhai to grab him. Then, Grand Hauhai's right hand formed a sword and pointed at Zhuowen's forehead. Zhuowen only felt a chill on his forehead. Then, he felt a dark blue energy enter his sea of consciousness through Grand Hauhai's fingertip. Grand Narcissus and the other three were also stunned by Grand Hauhai's sudden action. However, the corners of their mouths curled up and there was a hint of mockery in their eyes. "Grand Hauhai, what are you doing? How dare you touch Zhuowen? He's Xiaotian's son." A loud shout suddenly came from the end of the open space. There were many members of the Zhuo family standing at the end of the open space. The head of the family, Zhuo Xiangding, was standing at the head of the group. When they saw Zhuowen being held in Grand Hauhai's hand, they all revealed looks of anger. Zhuo Xiangding even shouted loudly, "Oh? So it's Uncle Xiangding. Long time no see. Looks like you're still quite healthy." Grand Hauhai's face was still calm. There was a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. He still had time to talk to Zhuo Xiangding while holding Zhuowen in one hand. Whoosh! Zhuo Xiangding's hair and beard flared up in anger as he glared at Grand Hauhai and roared, "I said, let go of Zhuowen. What are you going to do to him?" "Uncle, don't worry. Zhuowen is Xiaotian's son. As Xiaotian's good brother, I won't do anything to harm him. You should just stay aside." Grand Hauhai smiled faintly and flicked his finger. A blue light shot out from his fingertip and turned into a blue barrier in front of Zhuo Xiangding. No matter how Zhuo Xiangding attacked, he couldn't break the blue barrier. At this moment, Zhuowen, who was held in Grand Hauhai's hand, frowned slightly. He was trying his best to resist the dark blue energy that invaded his sea of consciousness from Grand Hauhai's fingertip. In the sea of consciousness there was a chaotic darkness. In this chaotic darkness, a wisp of dark blue energy, like an arrow, was constantly moving forward in the darkness, trying to enter the deepest part of the sea of consciousness. In the depths of his sea of consciousness, Xiao He had turned into an oval-shaped black fog and fell into a deep sleep. Aside from Xiao He, there was also the broken jade tripod floating quietly in the center. Block it! Zhuowen screamed madly in his heart. Hundreds of level 4 advanced mental strength in his mud pill palace flew toward the strange blue energy like huge dragons. Crack! 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 A strange sound was heard. Zhuowen was shocked to find that the dark blue energy was extremely tough. The hundreds of mind powers in front of it were all shattered like tofu. Poochie! Zhuowen couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He looked ferocious. Eh? He has rank 4 advanced mind powers? In the outside world, Grand Haohai was controlling the blue energy, intending to enter the deepest part of Zhuowen's sea of consciousness. He did not expect Zhuowen to have rank 4 advanced spiritual power, and hundreds of them appeared at once. It was so terrifying. What an outstanding young man. He's not even 20 years old, but he's already at the peak of the ultimate emperor stage and a rank 4 advanced arcanist. Grand Haohai's eyelids twitched. Zhuowen's talent was beginning to move him. If Zhuowen was only at the peak of the ultimate emperor stage, he wouldn't be so surprised. However, other than his martial achievements, Zhuowen's mind powers had also reached the rank 4 advanced arcanist level. This was a little terrifying. Grand Haohai didn't try to hide his voice. Grand Daffodil and the other 3 heard him. They looked at each other with shock on their faces. The fact that Zhuowen had reached the pinnacle of the ultimate 5-wheel emperor realm at such a young age had already shocked them. However, they had never imagined that Zhuowen was also a level 4 great accomplishment arcana master. This kid was a little too terrifying. Everyone knew that the cultivation of mind powers was much more difficult than martial art. It was already a genius to be able to cultivate to a rank 3 arcanist before the age of 20. However, this kid in front of them had actually reached the rank 4 advanced arcanist level. It was too terrifying. We have all underestimated how terrifying this kid is. Although his martial skills aren't as good as Mrs., with his terrifying mind powers, he is qualified to be with Mrs. Elder Sure sighed softly. Grand Daffodil frowned slightly. The talent that Zhuowen had displayed made even her feel ashamed. However, when she heard Elder Sure praise Zhuowen in such a way, she was instinctively unhappy. She snorted coldly and said, "So what if he is talented in mind powers? This kid's background is too lowly. He is still not worthy of Sister Baihe and our Grand family." Elder Sure heard this and didn't refute. Although Grand Daffodil's words had a personal grudge, she wasn't wrong. Grand Baihe was the proud daughter of the Grand family. Her temperament and outlook were far superior to ordinary people. If one wasn't a monstrous genius, he wouldn't be able to catch her eye. In Grand Baihe's eyes, only the top 5 on the Green Emperor list could catch her eye. As for the other geniuses, she simply didn't care about them, as she had never paid much attention to geniuses who were weaker than her. Furthermore, it was said that the second prince of the royal family had once vaguely expressed his love for Grand Baihe. The second prince was also in the top 10 of the Green Emperor list, but he was ranked below Grand Baihe. Although the second prince was of noble status and had a lofty status, it wouldn't be a problem for him to be with Grand Baihe. However, Grand Baihe had rejected him directly because the second prince was weaker than her. In Grand Baihe's opinion, only powerhouses whose status and strength were above hers had the right to get close to her. Everyone else was like grass to her. Although Zhuowen's talent was extremely strong and his mind powers weren't weak, his overall strength wasn't weak compared to the top 10 on the Green Emperor list. Therefore, Elder Sure didn't think that Grand Baihe would be interested in Zhuowen. At the moment, Grand Haohai had a focused expression on his face as he controlled the blue energy to break through the obstruction of countless mind powers and enter the deepest part of his consciousness. I'm finally in, Grand Haohai said with a smile. At the moment, Zhuowen's face was extremely gloomy. How could he not know what Grand Haohai was trying to do? This person actually wanted to forcefully explore his consciousness and identify the armor spirit in his body. This action was extremely dangerous. If he wasn't careful, Zhuowen's consciousness might be messed up and he might become an idiot. I must not let him find out about Xiao Hei's existence. Zhuowen was extremely nervous. He knew that Grand Haohai had mentioned the dragon spirit and it probably wasn't a good thing. If he found out about Xiao Hei's existence, who knew what would happen? Swoosh. As soon as the blue energy entered the center of the consciousness, it headed straight for the sleeping Xiao Hei. This scene made Zhuowen shudder with fear. Just as the blue energy was about to approach Xiao Hei, the broken jade cauldron not far away suddenly buzzed and blocked in front of Xiao Hei. Suddenly, the blue energy was like maggots in a tarsal bone and dyed the jade cauldron blue. A blue light flashed, and the jade cauldron drilled out of Zhuowen's glabella. Then, a huge broken jade cauldron appeared in the air above him. It's actually not a dragon spirit. What kind of armor spirit is this broken jade cauldron? Looking at the jade cauldron that appeared above Zhuowen, Grand Haohai was astonished. He could clearly feel that the broken jade cauldron armor spirit that was extracted from Zhuowen's consciousness was extremely weak. It was most likely a useless armor spirit. His martial talent is so high, but I didn't expect him to have a useless armor spirit. Grand Haohai narrowed his eyes and revealed a mocking smile. Originally, the terrifying talent that Zhuowen had displayed earlier had already caused a trace of coldness to rise in his heart. However, after seeing Zhuowen's broken jade cauldron armor soul, this trace of coldness disappeared. Before reaching the Four Reverends realm, the armor spirit was not very useful to a martial artist. Because it was a spirit body, its help to a martial artist was extremely limited. However, after a martial artist reached the Four Reverends realm, the armor spirit would transform from a spirit body into a physical entity and have the possibility of materialization. At that time, the armor spirit would unleash extremely terrifying power. The stronger the armor spirit of a martial artist, the more powerful his soul power would be. When he reached the Four Reverends realm, his strength would become extremely terrifying. Among the many armor spirits, the strongest was undoubtedly the dragon spirit. Dragons were a race above all things. A martial artist who had a dragon spirit might not be much different from an ordinary martial artist before reaching the Four Reverends realm. However, once one reached the Four Reverends realm and the dragon spirit materialized, a martial artist could rely on the dragon spirit to become invincible among those of the same rank. He could even challenge a Four Reverends realm expert of a higher rank. After a martial artist reached the Four Reverends realm, it was not that easy to kill him. It was even more impossible to challenge someone of a higher rank. However, a martial artist with a powerful armor spirit had the possibility of doing so. It was common for a martial artist with a dragon spirit to challenge someone of a higher rank. Originally, Grand Haohai thought that Zhuowen might have the legendary dragon spirit. After all, he was the son of Zhuo Xiaotian, the son of the terrifying guy who had awakened the dragon spirit. However, now it seemed that Grand Haohai's concerns were unnecessary. Not only did Zhuowen not have a dragon spirit, the armor spirit he had was a useless armor spirit. Grand Haohai could completely imagine that if Zhuowen's cultivation reached the Four Reverends realm, he would probably become the weakest Four Reverends realm martial artist in history. Useless armor spirit? Grant Narcissus and the other three were stunned. The pressure that Zhuowen gave them just now was too great. Originally, they thought that even if Zhuowen did not have a dragon spirit, the armor spirit in his body would not be too weak. However, what appeared in front of them was actually a useless armor spirit. It's just a piece of trash with a useless armor spirit. It's even more impossible for him to be worthy of Sister Baihe. If this guy wants to be a toad lusting after a swan's meat, that's simply a fool's dream. He's just a piece of trash. Grant Narcissus sneered coldly. The corners of Chin Mu and Mu Lin's mouths curled up in a mocking smile, completely unbridled. Chapter 622. Granhohai's killing intent. The mocking smile on Granhohai's face became even more intense. He waved his right hand and the blue energy on the surface of the jade cauldron buzzed and retreated back into his body. Without the imprisonment of the blue energy, the jade cauldron armored spirit went back into Zhuowen's forehead. Zhuowen's eyes regained their clarity. Whoosh! As soon as he regained his clarity, the 3 pairs of lightning wings on his back unfolded. Zhuowen turned into lightning and retreated dozens of meters away. He stared at Granhohai, who was still smiling in front of him. Granhohai was extremely shrewd and had a knife hidden in his smile. Zhuowen was extremely fearful and disgusted with such a person. He really did not know why he became good brothers with his father. Moreover, Grand Haohai had secretly probed his sea of consciousness without giving him the slightest bit of respect. This made Zhuowen extremely angry. If Grand Haohai had even the slightest bit of killing intent, Zhuowen would have died on the spot. At this moment, the blue barrier in front of Zhuo Xiangding had been removed. In a flash, Zhuo Xiangding came to Zhuowen's side and asked worriedly, "Zhuowen, are you okay?" Zhuowen did not speak. He only shook his head and stared sharply at Granhohai in front of him. "Granhohai, what do you mean? As Zhuowen's elder, why did you attack Zhuowen?" Seeing that Zhuowen was fine, Zhuo Xiangding heaved a sigh of relief and asked Granhohai angrily, "Uncle, you are blaming the wrong person. As you can see, I did not hurt Zhuowen. I only checked his body." Granhohai smiled faintly. Zhuo Xiangding's pupils shrank. Granhohai was really shameless. He checked Zhuowen's sea of consciousness without permission and said it in such a dignified manner. Zhuowen's expression became increasingly gloomy. It was obvious that Grand Haohai did not come with good intentions. Although the smile on his face was extremely warm, his actions were extremely overbearing. Zhuowen reached out to stop Zhuo Xiangding and said indifferently, "Forget it. Grandpa, we don't have to bother with this kind of person. Since Grand Family Head has appeared today, I, Zhuowen, will give you face and take them away." "Haha. Nephew Zhuo seems to have forgotten something, right? You haven't handed over the marriage certificate yet." Grand Haohai's eyes flickered as he smiled faintly. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and a cold smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. He took out the yellowed marriage contract from his bosom and opened it. He pointed at the fingerprint below and said, "If I remember correctly, Patriarch Grand also left his fingerprint on this marriage contract, right? Since the fingerprint has been imprinted, I don't think the Grand Family Patriarch is a treacherous villain, right?" As soon as these words came out, Granhohai's skin trembled. The smile on his face faded as he stared at Zhuowen and said, "Haha. Nephew Zhuo, do you mean that you plan to marry into our grand family? If Nephew Zhuo has such intentions, I am willing to fulfill your wish." Zhuowen's words were reasonable. No matter how Granhohai quibbled, he had to admit that he did have a part of this marriage certificate. "Marry into our family?" Zhuowen sneered again and again, but shook his head and said, "I know my place. Your grand family is one of the 5 great families in the imperial city, and my Zhuo family is only a small family in a low-level city. This marriage is not suitable. Actually, I am also against it." Hearing this, Granhohai revealed a smile. In his heart, he secretly praised Zhuowen for being sensible. However, Zhuowen's next words caused his face to darken. "I will directly divorce Grand Lily. This way, the Grand family and the Zhuo family will have nothing to do with each other. Isn't this in line with the Grand Family Head's wishes?" At the end, Zhuowen emphasized the word "you." "Divorce? Zhuowen, are you sure?" Granhohai's gaze hardened, his voice finally becoming much colder. This Zhuowen actually dared to boast so shamelessly, daring to divorce the Grand Lily of their grand family. If they really accepted Zhuowen's divorce letter, their grand family would undoubtedly become a laughingstock. Zhuowen, I've already been polite enough to you. Now you only have two choices. Either hand over the marriage certificate, or your Zhuo family will be destroyed. I think this old man still has the qualifications to destroy your Zhuo family. Finally, Grand Haohai no longer had a pleasant expression, and his voice became extremely cold. He would absolutely not accept the letter of divorce. Moreover, in his eyes, Zhuo and the Zhuo family were insignificant like ants. He didn't put them in his eyes at all. Since Zhuo didn't know what was good for him, he didn't plan to pretend anymore. He directly shed all pretense of cordiality and began to threaten Zhuo. You're really shameless. You clearly just called me your nephew, but now you're threatening to destroy my Zhuo family. I'd like to ask you, Grand Family Head, how thick is your skin? Zhuo shook his head, the corners of his mouth filled with a mocking smile. Since Grand Haohai had shed all pretense of cordiality, Zhuo no longer had any scruples when speaking. His voice was as cold as ice in the 12th lunar month. Good. Zhuo, you're the one who forced me to do this. Originally, I didn't want to bicker with you too much because your Zhuo family and the Grand family used to be aristocratic families. Unfortunately, not only do you not know what's good for you, but you're also full of vulgarities. Today, I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of Xiaotian. Grand Haohai's expression was dark and cold. With a stomp of his foot, a terrifying aura instantly gushed out. Immediately, the entire empty ground seemed to have frozen. Zhuo let out a muffled groan under this aura, and actually knelt on the ground with one knee, a sinister expression on his face. I'll ask you one more time. Will you hand over the marriage certificate or not? Grand Haohai's voice carried a trace of coldness that chilled people to the bone. Haha. Do you think that just because our Zhuo family is weaker than your Grand family, we must be bullied by you? Must we listen to your orders and do whatever you want? Although our Zhuo family is weak, at least we have a backbone. We won't hand over the marriage certificate. Zhuo faced the sky and laughed loudly. His laughter was unrestrained, crazy, and unrestrained. Why did he, Zhuo, have to yield? Why did he have to compromise? If he compromised on everything, then the Grand family would be even more insatiable. You won't hand it over? Then you'll die. Grand Haohai let out a sinister laugh. He took a step forward and instantly arrived above Zhuo. His right palm pressed down, transforming into a several hundred feet large transparent palm print in the air, and fiercely bombarded Zhuo. Feeling the terrifying palm print in the sky, Zhuo was almost unable to move. This palm print was too terrifying. Just the power that flowed out was like a 10,000-foot-tall mountain, pressing down on him, making him unable to stand. Looks like I can only ask Big Brother Hantian to come and help. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. In the end, he still took out the teleportation talisman from his bosom and crushed it without hesitation. Instantly, a terrifying blood light soared into the sky. Above the void, a crack suddenly appeared, and a sloppy figure instantly appeared. The moment this sloppy figure appeared, he immediately struck out with his palm. The palm print in the void shattered into pieces like glass. Teleportation talisman? This Zhuo also has a teleportation talisman? With the palm print broken, Grand Haohai's pupils shrank and he retreated. He looked at the figure that stepped out of the blood pillar with fear. This person was definitely a strong opponent. He could not be careless. He's actually a 4th Paragon Realm expert? How can this Zhuo know a 4th Paragon Realm expert? Grand Haohai's beautiful face had a hint of disbelief. Those who could give out a teleportation talisman were basically close people. For this person to be able to give it to Zhuo, it was obvious that this person's relationship with Zhuo was not ordinary. Humph. So what if this person is a 4th Paragon Realm expert? Father is a Heavenly Paragon Realm expert. This person is definitely not a match for Father. Thinking of Grand Haohai's strength, the sneer on Grand Haohai's face became even wider. She did not believe that this expert that Zhuowen found would be stronger than her father. The blood pillar dissipated. A sloppy old beggar in ragged clothes suddenly stepped out. This person first struck a few poses in the air that he thought were handsome. Then, he slowly walked to Zhuowen's side. "Zhuowen, what's wrong? Did someone bully you?" This person was Lu Hantian. At this moment, Lu Hantian casually walked to Zhuowen's side. With a wave of his sleeve, Granho Hai's terrifying aura instantly collapsed. Granho Hai's pupils shrank again. This sloppy beggar's strength was probably above his expectations. He actually broke his aura so easily. Haha. This is a matter between our Granho Hai family and the Zhuo family. This matter has nothing to do with you. After thinking for a moment, Granho Hai's face recovered a warm smile. He cupped his hands slightly and his attitude was rather polite. He could feel the threatening feeling from this person, so he did not want to offend too much. "Oh? So you're the Granho Hai patriarch of the Granho Hai family?" Lu Hantian raised his eyebrows and chuckled. "That's me. It's best that you don't interfere in this matter. After all, our Granho Hai family is still quite powerful in the imperial capital county. It's not a wise move for you to lose the big picture for a small gain." Granho Hai's face revealed a trace of pride. Although he felt a threatening feeling from this person, after hearing of his Granho Hai family's name, this person should still give their Granho Hai family face. "Haha, who do you think you are? Losing the big picture for a small gain? You actually dare to threaten me. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? You'd better get lost as far as possible. Otherwise, I'll beat you up until your mother can't recognize you." Lu Hantian crossed his arms and sneered. Suddenly, the smile on Granho Hai family's face froze. He did not expect that the beggar man in front of him would be so unrestrained and unruly. "I really admire your ability. You clearly know that we're from the Granho Hai family, but you still dare to be so presumptuous. Since you don't want to take the road to heaven, then don't blame me for being impolite." Granho Hai's face darkened. He suddenly took a step forward and swept towards Lu Hantian. This Lu Hantian's mouth was too despicable. Even though Granho Hai was a scheming person, he could not help but be angry. He must teach Lu Hantian a lesson. "Haha! An initial heavenly venerate dares to teach me a lesson. Today, I'll beat you up until your mother can't recognize you." Lu Hantian was not afraid. He also took a step forward. Terrifying spear intent revolved around his body and turned into a ray of flowing light. Rumble. Chapter 623. Saint Heart Elixir. Deng deng deng. Heavy footsteps sounded continuously in the void. A figure retreated in a sorry state and only stabilized himself after a few hundred meters away. Glen Narcissus and the other 3 looked at him, and their faces were instantly filled with shock. The one who retreated awkwardly was Glen Haohai. The sloppy old beggar straightened his back and stood still in the void. How is this possible? How can this old beggar be so powerful? Even Lord Father has to retreat? Glen Narcissus' beautiful eyes widened as a trace of disbelief appeared on her pretty face. The current battle situation was extremely obvious. The sloppy old beggar was clearly stronger than Grand Haohai, and by quite a bit. What's going on with Zhuowen? How can he know such a terrifying expert? Elder Shi took a deep breath and muttered to himself. On the other hand, Qin Mu and Mu Lin kept quiet out of fear. They didn't dare to say even half a word now. This Zhuowen had really exceeded their expectations time and time again. He was actually able to invite such a strong expert. Even Grand Haohai had to retreat. "Who are you?" Glen Haohai stabilized himself and asked with a gloomy face. "Lu Hantian of the house of Marquis Qin." Lu Hantian sneered. "Lu Hantian?" Hearing this, Grand Haohai's pupils constricted to the extreme. Although Grand Haohai rarely paid attention to the affairs of other counties as a force of the imperial capital county, he had heard a little about the sensational event that happened in Mu Qin Marquis Mansion 2 months ago. one of the 5 superforces in Muqin County, Marquis House of Baichuan was destroyed by the House of Marquis Qin. Of course, a force like Marquis House of Baichuan was like an ant to the Glen family. It was not worth mentioning. However, Glen Haohai knew that there was an ancestor hidden in Marquis House of Baichuan. His name was Su Lingtian, and he was also an initial heavenly master. However, 2 months ago, he had heard that not only had the 100 Rivers Marquis Mansion been destroyed, but the patriarch of the 100 Rivers Marquis Mansion, Su Lingtian, had lost an arm and had to use the blood escape art to escape. The one who had made Su Lingtian so miserable was none other than Lu Hantian. After learning that this person was Lu Hantian, Grand Haohai's face twitched. He could only force a smile and said, "So it's Brother Lu. Zhuowen is my brother. Why do you want to touch him?" Lu Hantian said coldly. Grand Haohai's eyelids twitched and he said helplessly, "It's a long story. I came here this time merely to take back the marriage contract from all those years ago. Unfortunately, nephew Zhua has a stubborn character and just refused to give it to me. So I could only seize it." "Marriage certificate? So your grand family and the Zhua family actually have an engagement. I heard that the grand lily of your grand family is a proud daughter of the heavens. She's even ranked in the top 10 of the Azure Emperor leaderboard. She's barely worthy of my brother, Zhuowen. Also, are you blind? I'm handsome and charming. Although my brother, Zhuowen, is slightly inferior to me in terms of looks, he's still a first-class handsome man. Marrying your daughter is an honor for your grand family. You actually came here to take back the marriage certificate? Are you sick in the head or something?" Lu Hantian said casually. When he said those words, Grand Haohai almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Lu Hantian actually said that Grand Lily was barely worthy of Zhuowen. Moreover, this guy actually had the face to say that he was a handsome man. What kind of narcissism did he need to have to imagine himself as a handsome man? Although Lu Hantian looked like he was asking for a beating, Grand Haohai didn't dare to make a move. This Lu Hantian was too terrifying. He really didn't want to risk his life against such a person. "Zhuowen, you're the main character in this matter. You make the decision. That Grand Lily is not bad. You won't lose out by marrying that girl." Suddenly, Lu Hantian winked at Zhuowen and said. Zhuowen smiled bitterly and shrugged. "Since the other party has no intention of this marriage, I, Zhuowen, am not a shameless person. Naturally, I won't try to get a cold shoulder. As long as the Grand Family's patriarch accepts this divorce certificate, our Zhua family and your Grand Family will be considered even in the future." "Divorce certificate? Haha, Zhuowen, you really have a personality. No matter what, this Grand Lily is still a famous beauty in the Imperial City. Moreover, she's the Grand Family's proud daughter. It's said that her reputation in the Imperial City isn't small. You're actually divorcing her like this? Don't you feel that it's a pity?" Lu Hantian was stunned at first, but soon after, he burst into laughter. He gave Zhuowen a thumbs up with an expression that said, "You're awesome. It's not a pity. We've never met, so how can we talk about feelings? A cold marriage certificate is really hard for me to feel the slightest bit of meaning. Moreover, the Grand Family is high up. Our Zhua family can't match up to them." Speaking up to here, Zhuowen looked meaningfully at Grand Haohai, who was not far away, whose expression was gradually becoming gloomy. "That's true. No matter how beautiful a flower is, if it has thorns, it may not be a good thing." Lu Hantian nodded. As he spoke, Lu Hantian pointed at Grand Haohai and said casually, "Grand Haohai, you heard it too. My brother said that your Grand Lily is not worthy of him, so he wants to divorce her. You won't have any objections, right? Divorce certificate? Not worthy?" The more Grand Haohai heard, the angrier he became. He said coldly, "If I accept this divorce certificate, then where will our Grand Family's face go? Lu Hantian, don't think that just because you're strong enough, you can take me down. My grand family was able to become one of the 5 major families, not by chance. Speaking up to here, Grand Hauhai shook his sleeve, and a strange fruit that was constantly beating appeared in his palm. It was like a heartbeat, thumping non-stop. Saint Heart Elixir Fruit? Looking at the strange fruit in Grand Hauhai's palm, Lu Hantian's face twitched, and he could not help but exclaim. Even Zhuowen's pupils shrank. Although he was not old, with the existence of Xiao He, his experience was far beyond his peers. He naturally knew about the Saint Heart Elixir Fruit. The Saint Heart Elixir Fruit was a 7th-grade spirit medicine. It was said that after consuming it, it could instantly enhance a cultivator's potential and exert strength far beyond their own. Grand Hauhai was originally in the early stage of the heavenly venerable realm. If he consumed the Saint Heart Elixir Fruit, it would be extremely difficult for even Lu Hantian to deal with Grand Hauhai. As expected of one of the 7 major forces of the imperial city. The Grand family's background is indeed extraordinary. It is much more terrifying than the house of Marquis Qin. Narrowing his eyes, Zhuowen was quite surprised. The Grand family's background was indeed terrifying. They even had a 7th-grade spirit medicine like the Saint Heart Elixir Fruit. It was unlikely that the house of Marquis Qin could take out such a spirit medicine. Lu Hantian, I only want the marriage certificate. Once I get the marriage certificate, the Grand family and the Zhuo family will be even. At that time I will leave. This condition is not too much, right? Grand Hauhai was a little nervous at this moment. The Saint Heart Elixir Fruit was the only one in the Grand family. Once it was used, it would be gone. In fact, he did not want to use it like this. Lu Hantian frowned slightly, took a step forward and said coldly, "Use it if you have the guts. I will accompany you to the end." "That's what you said." Grand Hauhai's voice was cold and his eyes were gloomy. The atmosphere suddenly became more serious. Just as the 2 of them were about to fight, Zhuowen slowly walked in between the 2 of them. His clear voice slowly rang out. "Patriarch Grand, why don't we make a bet? How about it?" Zhuowen's arrival immediately eased the tension between Lu Hantian and Grand Hauhai. Grand Hauhai sighed and said coldly, "Bet? You can say it. Don't try your luck. The Grand family must get the marriage certificate back." The corner of Zhuowen's mouth slightly curled, and he said indifferently, "The War of the 9 Counties will be in 2 months. This War of the 9 Counties will also be the ranking battle of the Green Emperor leaderboard. This time, if I, Zhuowen, can surpass the Grand Lily, then your Grand family will have to accept my divorce certificate. On the other hand, if I can't surpass her, I will hand over the marriage certificate with both hands. How about it? Patriarch Grand, do you dare to bet?" At this point, Zhuowen straightened his back and his eyes shone like stars. When Grand Hauhai heard this, he raised his eyebrows and sneered, "Ha ha! Newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. Lily's strength is far above yours. You actually want to challenge her. You are simply courting death. Patriarch Grand, I'm asking you if you dare to bet? I don't want to listen to your nonsense." Zhuowen's eyes were cold as he said coldly. Grand Hauhai was stunned. He snorted and said, "Since you want to bet, I will bet with you. If you lose the Green Emperor leaderboard this time, you must hand over the marriage certificate. Of course, if I win this time, I will also bring the divorce letter and personally go to your Glen family." Zhuowen nodded and said, pretending to be serious, "Humph, you are quite confident. However, your confidence is just an illusion to me. Let's go." In the end, Grand Hauhai did not dare to use the Saint Heart Elixir to fight with Lu Hantian. The Saint Heart Elixir was too important. He was not willing to use it at all. After speaking, Grand Hauhai brought Grand Shuixian and the other 3 and broke through the sky, instantly disappearing into the horizon. "Zhuowen, are you afraid that I can't win against this Grand Hauhai?" When Grand Hauhai and the others left, Lu Hantian frowned and said, "How could he not see through Zhuowen's actions?" He was obviously worried that Grand Haohai would become too strong after consuming the Saint Heart elixir, which would be disadvantageous to him. However, Zhuowen shook his head and said, "Big brother Hantian, there's absolutely no need for you to fight to the death with Grand Haohai over the matter of the marriage contract. It's simply not worth it. I, Zhuowen, will personally settle this debt." Hearing this, Lu Hantian looked at Zhuowen with deep meaning. He patted Zhuowen's shoulder and suddenly said solemnly, "You have backbone. However, you still have to be careful. That Grand Lily is not easy to deal with. Its strength is even stronger than Guosheng." Zhuowen's pupil shrank. This Grand Lily was indeed not easy to deal with. It was even stronger than Guosheng. Zhuowen had experienced how terrifying Guosheng was. This Grand Lily was even stronger than Guosheng. Zhuowen immediately felt his heart sink. "However, you don't have to worry too much. Your talent is not inferior to that Grand Lily. The process of the 9 Counties War will take a lot of time. You still have a chance to catch up to that Grand Lily," Lu Hantian said with a smile. Zhuowen nodded. Soon after, he noticed that Lu Hantian's eyes were flickering, as if there was something difficult to say. He asked curiously, "Big brother Hantian? What's wrong? Do you have something to say?" Sighing lightly, Lu Hantian said hesitantly, "Zhuowen, do you have a dragon soul?" Chapter 6:24. Prepare. Zhuowen's eyes flickered as hesitation appeared on his face. Back in the Baichuan Marquis mansion, Xiao Hei's dragon soul materialization had probably attracted Lu Hantian's attention. However, the dragon soul was of great importance, and Xiao Hei's existence was Zhuowen's greatest secret. Moreover, Xiao Hei had repeatedly warned him not to reveal its existence. This was also the reason why Zhuowen hesitated. "Haha, I was too rude. This should be your private matter." Your big brother spoke out of turn. Seeing Zhuowen's expression, Lu Hantian said awkwardly, "That is indeed a dragon soul. As for what kind of existence it is, I can't say. I hope big brother Hantian can understand my difficulties. It's not that I don't want to say, but that I can't." Zhuowen shrugged helplessly. "Since you have your difficulties, I won't ask too much. However, I have to remind you that when your strength reaches the 4th venerable realm, it's best not to use this dragon soul easily. Especially in the imperial capital, you can't expose it," Lu Hantian suddenly said in a serious tone. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly as he asked, "Why?" "Because in the entire Eastern lands, only the direct descendants of the Blue Dragon Hall have the qualifications to possess a dragon soul. If a martial artist not from the Blue Dragon Hall possesses a dragon soul, once discovered by the Blue Dragon Hall, he will definitely be hunted down by the Blue Dragon Hall. The Blue Dragon Hall doesn't allow other martial artists to possess the same dragon soul as them. Muqin County's geography is quite remote, so the Blue Dragon Hall didn't set up a force here. When the dragon soul appeared in your body, it didn't attract the attention of the Blue Dragon Hall. However, there is a branch of the Blue Dragon Hall in the imperial capital. This branch of the Blue Dragon Hall is quite powerful and is a terrifying force comparable to the imperial family in the imperial capital. That's why, in the imperial city, you absolutely cannot expose the dragon soul in your body." Lu Hantian's expression became much more serious as he spoke. A wisp of coldness gushed out from Zhuowen's eyes when he heard this. He naturally knew why the Blue Dragon Hall was doing this. When he had first awakened his dragon soul, Zhuo Xiangding had already told him the reason behind the Ryuka's annihilation. Although some of it was related to the catastrophe 10,000 years ago, most of it was due to the invasion of the Blue Dragon Hall, which led to the death of the Ryuka bloodline. Until now, there was basically no trace of the Ryuka bloodline. 10,000 years had passed, and the Blue Dragon Hall still did not let the Ryuka bloodline go. Once discovered, they would use all their strength to exterminate them. Zhuowen even suspected that the disappearance of his father, Zhuo Xiaotian, back then was inextricably linked to the Blue Dragon Hall. Although their Zhou family was a Ryuka bloodline, it was a pity that there were too few Ryuka bloodlines in their bodies. Basically, there were very few descendants who could awaken a dragon's soul. His father, Zhou Xiaotian, could be considered the first Ryuka bloodline in the Zhou family to awaken a dragon's soul. Since then, he had changed his surname to Long Xiaotian. This time, when I go to the imperial capital, I must find out the secret behind my father's disappearance. Zhuowen muttered to himself. Although he had never seen his father before, the kinship of blood was still thicker than water. Moreover, if it was not for the jade pendant that Zhou Xiaotian had given him, Zhuowen would have been assassinated long ago. Speaking of which, Zhuowen still owed Zhou Xiaotian a lot. Big brother Han Tian, thank you for the reminder. Zhuowen hurriedly cupped his hands towards Lu Hantian, his face full of gratitude. He knew that since Lu Hantian had warned him to be careful of the Blue Dragon Hall, it was obvious that he was on his side. In addition, Lu Hantian had stood up for him many times, so Zhuowen knew that Lu Hantian truly treated him as a brother. Zhuowen felt warm in his heart. There are only 2 months left until the Battle of the 9 Counties. Now, follow me to the house of Marquis Qin. In a month, we will depart for the imperial capital. Lu Hantian smiled faintly. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded. With the Battle of the 9 Counties approaching, he really did need to prepare well. Zhuowen bid farewell to Zhuo Xiangding and the others, then followed Lu Hantian out of Rattan Armor City. After returning to the house of Marquis Qin, Lu Hantian did not alert anyone. He gave Zhuowen a luxurious loft and told him to prepare well in the remaining month. I won't disturb you any longer. Now that your cultivation has reached the peak of the ultimate Emperor realm, there is still a month left. Perhaps you will be able to reach the ultimate Emperor realm by relying on the power of the blood demon in the demon-suppressing green coffin. After Lu Hantian finished speaking, he stepped into the air and disappeared from the loft, leaving Zhuowen alone. Looking around, Zhuowen discovered that the loft that Lu Hantian had given him was extremely vast. In front of the loft there was a garden that was dozens of miles wide. Birds chirped and the fragrance of flowers filled the air. The environment was beautiful and tranquil. After passing through the rockery in the courtyard, Zhuowen arrived in front of the loft and pushed open the door. Inside was an extremely spacious hall. It was fully furnished. The hall was divided into a study, a bedroom, and a living room. The decorations were neat and solemn. Young Master Zhuowen, 2 delicate and pretty maids stood on either side of the door. When they saw Zhuowen enter, the 2 maids hurriedly bowed respectfully. Moreover, their watery eyes were constantly sizing up Zhuowen. The 2 maids were budding and were in the prime of their youth. The 2 of them had been specially sent by Lu Hantian to serve Zhuowen. When they found out that the master that they were serving was Zhuowen, the 2 maids were overjoyed. Zhuowen's reputation could be said to be like thunder in the province. Not only did it spread among practitioners, it even spread among the commoners. Zhuowen's deeds were also well known by many people. Many people had already treated Zhuowen as an idol in their hearts, dreaming of becoming a young talent like Zhuowen in the future. Although Zhuowen could not be considered handsome, his black hair draped over his shoulders, his gaze was sharp, and his somewhat ordinary face was extremely pleasing to the eye. Furthermore, Zhuowen was not very old. When the 2 maids saw Zhuowen for the first time, their hearts began to beat wildly. Sensing the small movements of the 2 maids, Zhuowen helplessly shook his head and said, "The 2 of you can leave first. When I cultivate, I'm not used to having people in the room." When the 2 maids heard this, a sliver of sadness appeared on their faces. However, since Zhuowen had said so, they naturally felt embarrassed to remain in the room. After the 2 maids left, Zhuowen slowly sat on the cushion in the center of the room. First, he silently adjusted the lingering aura in his body. When his aura had completely calmed down, Zhuowen opened the green coffin on his back and placed it in front of him. "I hope I can advance to the ultimate 6-wheel Emperor realm in a month's time. Zhuowen's expression became extremely solemn as he looked at the green coffin in front of him. His heart was currently heavy. Ever since he had sparred with Guosheng, he had realized just how big of a gap there was between him and the experts in the top 10 of the Green Emperor rankings. Even though Zhuowen had already comprehended spear intent to a higher level, if he were to face Guosheng again, Zhuowen was still not confident that he would be able to last more than a few moves. The difference in strength between the two of them was just too great. Glan family, Zhuowen, will definitely make you accept the letter of divorce. When he thought of the bet with Glan Haohai, Zhuowen's heart became even heavier. The Glan Lily was ranked higher than Guosheng and was stronger. If Zhuowen wanted to defeat the Glan Lily in the Battle of the Nine Counties, he had to quickly increase his strength. When he thought of this, Zhuowen stroked his right hand and slammed it into the demon-suppressing green coffin. Instantly, a third of the demon-suppressing green coffin was opened by Zhuowen. A terrifying pressure descended and pressed down on Zhuowen's body. Humph! With a groan, a trace of pain appeared on Zhuowen's face. However, Zhuowen's movements were not slow. He formed a sword with his right hand and pointed it at the surface of the green coffin. Instantly, waves of blood-red energy flowed from the green coffin through Zhuowen's sword fingers and into his body. By chance, Zhuowen discovered that cultivating under the pressure of the green coffin was much more efficient than usual. However, it was also much more dangerous. If he was careless, it was very likely that he would not be able to withstand the pressure and suffer a backlash. In order to quickly increase his strength, Zhuowen could only take a risk. This was something he had no choice but to do. Moreover, the Battle of the Nine Counties was also the key to whether he would be able to qualify for the entrance examination of the Jiaxin College. The pressure on Zhuowen's body had undoubtedly increased by a lot. Time flew by like a white steed flitting by a crack. A month's time quietly passed. In the cool morning, a ray of warm sunlight slowly sprinkled down. In the center of the house of Marquis Qin there was a huge square. At this moment, there were nearly 100 figures gathered in the center of the square. In the center of the square there were two figures standing. One of them had eyes as bright as stars and eyebrows as sharp as swords. He was wearing a purple robe, revealing a dignified and noble aura. This person was the Marquis of Qin, Lu Nantian. Standing beside Lu Nantian was the sloppy Lu Hantian. At this moment, Lu Hantian was leaning against a stone pillar. He was constantly trying out various postures, as if he was choosing which one was more handsome. The nearly 100 geniuses in the square were all rolling their eyes at the shameless Lu Hantian. They were all having a headache. They could even imagine that if this Lu Hantian were to bring them to the imperial capital, they would definitely lose all face. Thinking of this situation, the faces of many geniuses began to turn ugly. The others should be here soon. Lu Nantian didn't care about the strange Lu Hantian beside him. As the younger brother of Lu Hantian, Lu Nantian was already used to Lu Hantian's strange behavior and personality. He was already used to it. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As soon as LV Nantian said this, 5 sounds of air being torn apart suddenly swept over from the distant horizon. In just an instant, 5 streams of light stopped in the air above the square. The brilliance of the light receded, revealing 5 figures with surging auras. These 5 people were the ones who had obtained the ancient inheritance on the 4th level of the Origin Qi Tower. They were LV Yitao, Luo Xing, Qin Lian, Qin Batian, and Ling Wushuang. Among the 5, the one with the strongest aura was undoubtedly LV Yitao, followed by Luo Xing, Qin Lian, Qin Batian, and Ling Wushuang were all on par. What a strong aura! All 5 of them are actually above the ultimate 5-wheel emperor realm. The ancient inheritance is really incredible. In less than half a year, it actually allowed the cultivator's cultivation to rise so quickly. In the square, nearly 100 geniuses looked up at the 5 figures in the sky. Their eyes were filled with shock and envy. They could feel that the auras of these 5 people far surpassed theirs. Chapter 6:25. Let's go. Imperial capital. The 5 of them landed in the square. Under Lu Nanshan's guidance, they stood at the front of the group. Qinglian, who was standing beside Luo Xing, couldn't help but size up the group when they arrived in the square. When she realized that the person she was looking for wasn't there, her eyes dimmed. Qinglian, are you looking for Zhuowen? A coquettish laugh rang out. Qinglian tilted her head and immediately saw Luo Xing looking at her with teasing eyes. She couldn't help but blush. However, she still mustered up her courage and whispered, "Senior Sister Luo Xing, didn't you say that Zhuowen isn't dead? Why didn't he gather at the square?" "I don't know. Maybe Zhuowen was delayed by something? After all, there's still some time before the teleportation formation to the Imperial capital is activated." Luo Xing shook her head. Qinglian knew that she had been too concerned. Back then, Zhuowen hadn't been able to come out of the Blood Demon's inheritance. Qinglian had been sad for a long time. In the end, she had decided to go into seclusion and only came out today. The inheritance that Qinglian had obtained was called the Wind Sword Sect. This sect's inheritance was extremely suitable for her. Thus, during her seclusion, her cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. She had broken through to the mid-stage of the Ultimate Emperor realm. She was much stronger than before. Lvetao, who was standing at the front of the group, raised his head. There was a look of anticipation on his handsome face. With the help of the Tiangang sect's inheritance, Lvetao had successfully broken through to the ultimate 6-wheel Emperor realm. He really wanted to see what level Zhuowen, who had obtained the Blood Demon's inheritance, would reach. He had to admit that Zhuowen, who had comprehended the advanced spear intent, was very, very strong. Before his breakthrough, Lvetao knew that he wouldn't be a match for Zhuowen. However, he had broken through to the Ultimate Emperor realm now. He knew that if Zhuowen was still at the Ultimate Emperor realm, he might be stronger than Zhuowen. Furthermore, he didn't believe that Zhuowen could break through to the Ultimate Emperor realm so quickly. Time gradually passed. 4 hours had passed. Many people in the square began to feel frustrated. They wondered why Zhuowen was so slow. Some people even began to suspect that Zhuowen didn't dare to come. Rumble. Just as everyone was beginning to get annoyed, dark clouds suddenly gathered above the house of Marquis Qin. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Countless lightning snakes darted back and forth in the clouds, each as thick as a bucket. Tribulation clouds? Could it be that someone is undergoing a heavenly tribulation to break through? On the square, everyone raised their heads to look at the sky. Looking at the gathering dark clouds, astonishment appeared on their faces. These dark clouds with lightning flashing and thunder rumbling were clearly the tribulation clouds of the world's calamity. At this moment, everyone thought of one person, and that was Zhuowen, who had yet to appear. Could it be that this calamity is related to Zhuowen? Lvetao's pupils constricted as he muttered to himself in a solemn voice. Rumble. The tribulation clouds finally gathered together. Immediately, countless lightning bolts descended from the tribulation clouds at the same time. Immediately, the countless lightning bolts merged and turned into 1,000 feet large lightning dragon. A dragon roar resounded across the sky with a monstrous might. What terrifying lightning! This is probably the 6th cycle of heavenly tribulation, right? As soon as the lightning dragon was formed, the faces of the geniuses in the square turned pale. Some of the weaker ones even felt their bodies go soft. The lightning dragon that was formed was too terrifying. It gave them a feeling that they couldn't resist it. Whoosh! As soon as the lightning dragon appeared, an unruly figure suddenly shot into the sky from a pavilion. This person held a bone spear in his hand and carried a green coffin on his back. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and he looked very dashing. Zhuowen! It really is Zhuowen. This kid actually reached the 6th cycle of the Ultimate Emperor realm so quickly? Looking at the unruly figure, Lv Tao's pupils constricted slightly. A trace of bitterness appeared on his handsome face. This Zhuowen was really a monster. When the Vitality Tower had just started, he hadn't taken this kid seriously. It wasn't until his performance on the third level of the Vitality Tower at Zhongling Mountain that Lv Tao started to pay attention to this kid. Although Lv Tao had lost to Zhuowen on Zhongling Mountain, in terms of strength, Lv Tao was undoubtedly stronger than Zhuowen. In fact, he was much stronger. However, in just half a year, Zhuowen's cultivation had actually caught up with his. In addition, this kid had comprehended the terrifying spear intent. He was basically invincible among those of the same level. Once Zhuowen reached the 6th cycle of the Ultimate Emperor realm, Lv Tao wouldn't be a match for Zhuowen at all. I accept my defeat wholeheartedly. I really don't know if Zhuowen will be able to shine in the Battle of the 9 Counties with his strength and potential. He might even be able to enter the top 10 of the Green Emperor list. Lv Tao wasn't too conflicted. After he had lost to Zhuowen on Zhongling Mountain, he knew that Zhuowen's talent and potential were much stronger than his. It was only a matter of time before he was surpassed by Zhuowen. However, he didn't expect that time would come so quickly. Zhuowen faced the lightning head-on, which immediately angered the terrifying lightning dragon. With a roar, the lightning dragon suddenly swung its tail and instantly swept towards Zhuowen. Countless lightning flashed through the void, almost causing the space to collapse. Zhuowen wasn't afraid. He suddenly swung his bone spear and a terrifying spear intent burst out, turning into blue water droplets. These blue water droplets suddenly condensed and immediately turned into a blue spear shadow that was hundreds of feet long. Whoosh! Like an arrow that had left a bow, the spear shadow penetrated through the air and instantly smashed onto the lightning dragon. Immediately, a shocking scene appeared. The frighteningly powerful lightning dragon was actually directly shattered into countless lightning glows under this frightening spear shadow. So strong. The tribulation lightning was actually broken just like that? This Zhuowen is a bit too terrifying. Looking at the lightning dragon that couldn't withstand a single blow from the spear shadow, everyone in the square was stunned. They had personally experienced the terror of the lightning dragon. Since it couldn't withstand a single blow from Zhuowen, it could only mean that Zhuowen was too strong. The bitterness at the corner of Lv Tao's mouth became even more intense. Zhuowen was indeed terrifying. He knew that if he faced the lightning dragon, although he could defeat it, it wouldn't be as easy as Zhuowen. Boom! Boom! The tribulation clouds once again sent down bolts of lightning, transforming into terrifying lightning dragons in the void. These lightning dragons were even more terrifying than the lightning dragons from before, but Zhuowen was not afraid. The bone spear in his hand shook, transforming into a sky full of spear shadows. A terrifying spear intent erupted, and all of these lightning dragons were destroyed and scattered. The lightning dragons were destroyed, and the tribulation clouds also slowly dispersed. The aura within Zhuowen's body also increased by leaps and bounds. His aura was even more vigorous than Lv Tao's. Zhuowen had successfully advanced to the ultimate 6-wheel Emperor realm. Whoosh! With a step, Zhuowen landed in front of the square like a bolt of lightning. He cupped his hands in apology to Lv Hantian and Lv Nantian. Brother Lv Nantian, Brother Hantian, I was delayed by my breakthrough. I'm really sorry. It's fine. Zhuowen, the stronger you are, the more useful you are to our Muqin County. You will definitely be able to shine in the War of the 9 Counties. Lv Nantian's eyes flashed as he laughed loudly. After comprehending spear intent and advancing to the ultimate 6-wheel Emperor realm, Zhuowen's strength was probably comparable to a peak ultimate 6-wheel Emperor realm existence. He might even be able to fight a ultimate 7-wheel Emperor realm existence. It could be said that Zhuowen had undoubtedly become the #1 expert of the younger generation in Muqin County. After all, the War of the 9 Counties was related to the honor of Muqin County. As a result, the stronger Zhuowen was, the more beneficial it would be to their Muqin county. LV Hantian, who had been posing as he leaned against a stone pillar, finally stopped. He nodded at Zhuowen in satisfaction as a gratified smile appeared on his face. Return to the group. Brother and I won't be able to use the teleportation formation soon. LV Nantian smiled faintly. Zhuowen nodded with that. Afterwards, he arrived at the front of the group where LV Yitao, Luo Xing, and the others were. LV Yitao nodded at Zhuowen as a form of greeting. LV Yitao had always been a carefree person. Although he was rather impressed by Zhuowen, it was impossible for him to show all his emotions on his face. Zhuowen, congratulations on your breakthrough. Qin Batian and Ling Wushuang clasped their hands at Zhuowen with a warm expression on their faces. The two of them knew that since Zhuowen had advanced to the ultimate six-wheel emperor stage, his cultivation level was on par with LV Yitao's. In addition, Zhuowen had already comprehended spear essence, so his strength was definitely above LV Yitao's. It could be said that Zhuowen was definitely the main force in this war of the 9 counties. It shouldn't be a problem for him to enter the top 15 on the Green Emperor list. Zhuowen, you are indeed not an ordinary person. Even the blood demon inheritance couldn't trap you. Moreover, the moment you came out, the 100 Rivers Marquis residence was destroyed because of you. I really don't know if you are a lucky star or a jinx. Luo Xing, who was originally cold and indifferent, suddenly smiled sweetly like 100 flowers blooming. Many of the surrounding cultivators were stunned for a moment because of Luo Xing's smile. Some of them even revealed an intoxicated look in their eyes. Luo Xing's unusual attitude towards Zhuowen immediately caused many people to be astonished. There were even some who revealed a trace of jealousy in their eyes. Luo Xing was the #1 beauty in the commandery. Her beauty was unparalleled and her temperament was unique. She was the dream goddess of many young talent. Moreover, she usually spoke bluntly to others. Now that Luo Xing was smiling sweetly at Zhuowen, it naturally caused many cultivators to be jealous. Zhuowen was also slightly surprised. Luo Xing's attitude towards him was basically lukewarm. Today's attitude made him feel a little strange, but he didn't think too much about it. Zhuowen, it's great that you came out, really great. Qing Lian's beautiful eyes stared straight at Zhuowen. There was a joyful smile on her face and a trace of tears in her eyes. Yes, I came out. Zhuowen smiled. Zhuowen heard from Red Lotus that Clear Lotus was greatly hurt because of his matter. Regarding this, Zhuowen also felt rather guilty. Alright, everyone get ready. The teleportation array is about to be activated. Suddenly, Lu Nantian and Lu Hantian slowly floated in the air. Their faces were filled with solemnity. Soon after, the two of them formed hand seals at the same time. Waves of terrifying power burst out from their bodies. A dazzling light that was as bright as day suddenly burst out from their hands. Then, a complicated array that was hundreds of meters in size rose from the bottom of the square. The array immediately enveloped everyone. We're finally going to the imperial capital. At the front of the group, Zhuowen felt the teleportation power around him. His eyes were filled with anticipation. He wanted to see just how prosperous the imperial capital, the core and most prosperous city of the Qing Xian Empire, would be. Whoosh! Chapter 626. Grand Lily. There was only a month to the Battle of the 9 Counties. Under the leadership of Lu Hantian and Lu Nantian, the geniuses of Muqin Marquis disappeared from the teleportation formation. The other 7 lords of the Qing Xian Empire also brought their geniuses and headed to the imperial capital. In the northwest of the imperial capital county, there was an extremely vast plain. In the center of the plain, magnificent buildings appeared one after another, occupying nearly a third of the entire plain. Its scale was even more magnificent than the Muqin county. The land on the plain was where the Grand Family was located. In the middle of the Grand Family's land, there was a huge open space. On the open space, there were groups of disciples with powerful auras. Among them, Grand Daffodil, Qin Mu and Mu Lin were standing at the front of the group. Close to 100 geniuses from the Glan family raised their heads and stared at the sky with burning eyes. They could see a majestic figure quietly floating in midair. A terrifying aura was emitting from his body, causing the space around him to distort. This person was the head of the Grand family, Grand Haohai. A month ago, due to Lu Hantian, he did not get any benefits from the Zhou family. Instead, he brought Grand Daffodil and the other three back to the Grand family. However, Grand Haohai did not publicize the matter between the Grand family and the Zhou family. It was not something to be proud of. If it were to be publicized, it would damage the reputation of the Grand family. Moreover, in Grand Haohai's opinion, Zhuowen would definitely lose this bet. Once the Battle of the Nine Counties was over and the rankings on the Azure Emperor rankings were completely determined, Zhuowen would definitely obediently hand over the marriage contract. He's just a piece of trash with a useless armor soul. What's the use of Zhuowen's talent? When his strength reaches the fourth reverend realm, this piece of trash will be left far behind by he might not even be comparable to ordinary geniuses. Grand Haohai sneered in his heart. Grand Haohai didn't expect that Zhuo Xiaotian's son, Zhuowen, who was so talented and had even awakened the dragon soul, didn't inherit the dragon soul. Instead, he only had a useless armor soul. This made Grand Haohai gloat. Whoosh! A beautiful figure floated from the depths of the grand residence. Just like a fluttering butterfly, she gently floated over in the air. Her every action instantly attracted the attention of many people below. Many people even revealed an infatuated expression when they looked at this beautiful figure. Miss Baihe has finally come out. Miss Baihe is a peerless beauty. I wonder which young talent will be able to win Miss Baihe's heart. Very difficult. In my opinion, only the top few on the Azure Emperor leaderboard are qualified to be with Miss Baihe. The others simply don't have such qualifications. That's true. Miss Baihe is so beautiful that even the fishes and geese alight. She is devastatingly beautiful. Moreover, she is one of the top 10 geniuses on the Green Emperor leaderboard. There are only a few people who are worthy of Miss Baihe. When this beautiful figure floated in the air, the geniuses in the square were in an uproar and their eyes were filled with excitement. Grand Lily was the pride of the Grand family, and she was the goddess in everyone's heart. When Grand Lily appeared, it naturally caused many people to go crazy. Whoosh! The beautiful figure floated over and instantly came to Grand Haohai's side, revealing her fair and beautiful face. This woman was around the age of 20 and wore a light purple dress. Her features were exquisite, her eyes were like pools of clear water, her appearance was gorgeous, and her skin was like jade, like a wisp of clear and translucent snow. Moreover, every single frown and smile of this woman actually carried a wisp of a confident heroic spirit, and this heroic spirit displayed a different kind of charm on her. Baihe. Looking at this beautiful lady, Grand Haohai revealed a smile on his face. Grand Lily's talent was even more terrifying than his in the past. He knew that if Grand Lily was given enough time, it would not be a problem for her to surpass him. He also believed that Grand Lily would be able to lead the Grand family to an even more glorious height. "Father, is everyone here?" Grand Lily smiled and her voice, which was like an aureole, slowly rang out. "Yes. Now that you are here, everyone is here." Grand Haohai nodded his head and smiled. Below, Grand Daffodil stood at the front of the group while Qin Mu and Mu Lin followed behind her. The gazes of the three converged on Grand Lily in the sky, and their gazes revealed a trace of fanaticism and worship. Grand Lily was the pride of the Grand family. Among the younger generation of the Grand family, there was no one who did not worship Grand Lily. Moreover, this kind of worship had basically reached the level of fanaticism. Sister Baihe's aura has become much stronger. Looks like Sister Baihe has gained a lot from this closed-door training. Grand Daffodil looked at the graceful figure, and her beautiful eyes were filled with fanaticism as she spoke. That's right. Miss Baiha's talent can be considered as one of the best in the imperial capital. Even His Highness Emperor Qing had praised her before. Mu Lin waved his folding fan and said cautiously, Miss Baiha is a proud daughter of the heavens. That Zhuowen really thinks that he is extraordinary and actually threatened to divorce Miss Baiha. In my opinion, this person is simply an arrogant person who does not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Qin Mu, who was dressed in black, coldly said, That Zhuowen's talent is actually not bad. It's a pity that he is a trash who possesses a trash armor spirit. How can such a trash be compared to Sister Baiha? After the Azure Emperor leaderboard is confirmed, this person will know how high the heavens are and how deep the earth is. When Zhuowen was mentioned, Grand Daffodil's beautiful eyes were filled with anger. Back then at the Zhuo family, Zhuowen had caused her to lose face. Grand Daffodil had long hated Zhuowen to the core. However, it was a pity that Zhuowen had the support of Lu Hantian. Even Grand Daffodil could not do anything to him. However, Grand Daffodil knew that the difference between Zhuowen and Grand Lily was like heaven and earth. In her opinion, the bet that Zhuowen had proposed back then was a joke. Zhuowen was bound to lose without a doubt. Father, I just came out of seclusion today. However, I heard that Daffodil brought people to the Zhuo family. Is the engagement back? Grand Lily suddenly asked Grand Daffodil softly. When Grand Daffodil heard this, the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of helplessness as he said, The engagement was not back. Not back? Grand Lily frowned slightly and continued, That Zhuo family is merely a small family in a low-grade city. That Zhuowen is said to be a trash. Why was the engagement not back? It's a long story. Grand Daffodil sighed slightly and told Grand Lily everything that had happened at the Zhuo family that day without hiding anything. The more Grand Lily listened, the more shocked she became. In the end, her eyebrows knitted together as she said, That Zhuowen's cultivation has actually reached the pinnacle of the five-wheel emperor realm? Furthermore, he has Lu Hantian, a heavenly venerate expert, standing behind him? Furthermore, he has even comprehended spear intent? That Zhuowen's talent is indeed not weak. However, it's a pity that this child was born with a trash armor soul. So what if this child's talent in martial arts is high? When his strength reaches the four-wheel emperor realm, he will understand how useless a trash armor soul is. This child's martial arts path will end here. At this point, the corners of Grand Lily's mouth revealed a trace of a mocking smile. His talent in martial arts was so high, but the broken jade cauldron armor soul was actually useless. It had to be said that this was a great irony. So it's a trash armor soul. If this child had a dragon soul, perhaps he would have the strength to fight with me. Since it's a trash armor soul, this child's martial arts path will end here. So what if he has comprehended spear intent? If that Zhuowen wants to defeat me, it's simply impossible. Grand Lily nodded her head lightly. Her beautiful eyes were calm and even indifferent from the beginning. It was obvious that she did not put that Zhuowen in her eyes. Yes, that Zhuowen's cultivation is weaker than yours. His armor soul is also not good. Although he has comprehended intent, you have also comprehended intent. The bet that Zhuowen personally proposed is simply a joke. That Zhuowen is just a small character. We don't have to pay attention to him. Lily, are you confident that you can enter the top 5 this time? Grand Lily did not care too much about Zhuowen. Instead, he stared at Grand Lily and asked with a slightly excited expression. 70%. Grand Lily said with a smile. Good. Hearing this, the smile on Grand Lily's face became even wider. He knew Grand Lily's character. She would never boast. Since she said that she was 70% confident, then this time there was a great chance that she could enter the top 5. We should also set off. I'm afraid that the Battle of the 9 Counties this time will be extremely exciting. Grand Lily said with a faint smile. Yes. Let's set off. Grand Lily laughed loudly. With a wave of his sleeve, a brilliance spilled out and enveloped everyone below. When the brilliance faded, the crowd instantly disappeared from the open space. The brilliance gradually faded. An intense light suddenly shot into Zhuowen's eyes, causing him to squint his eyes. After adapting to the light for a while, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. At this moment, Zhuowen and the numerous geniuses of Muqin County behind him were standing on a huge open space. Lu Hantian and Lu Nantian were looking ahead with solemn expressions. Following Lu Hantian and Lu Nanshan's line of sight, Zhuowen was astonished to discover that there was a terrifying city gate that was tens of thousands of feet tall standing in front of them. The city gate was so large that it was almost 100 times larger than the city gate of the county. It almost pierced through the clouds. On both sides of the city gate, there were two figures that were tens of thousands of feet tall standing quietly on the left and right side of the city gate. A terrifying aura was emitted from the two figures, causing everything on the ground to tremble. The two figures that were tens of thousands of feet tall were not humans. Instead, they were humanoid meta-beasts that were covered in chains. They had the heads of lions and the bodies of humans. Due to the thick chains covering their bodies, the two terrifying beasts could only stand on both sides of the city gate and were unable to move at all. As expected of the imperial capital, the guards at the city gate are actually ancient griffins. These are terrifying meta-beasts that possess an ancient bloodline. At this moment, Lu Yitao's calm face revealed a shocked expression as he stood beside Zhuowen. He could not help but exclaim in admiration. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a trace of shock when he heard this. He had heard of the ancient griffin before. It was a kind of terrifying origin beast that possessed an ancient bloodline. Its talent was extremely terrifying and it was extremely powerful. Chapter 6:27. Lu Yen County. At this moment, the city gates of the imperial capital were tightly shut. The ancient griffins on both sides of the city gates stared coldly at Lu Hantian and the other geniuses from Muqin County. Feeling the chilling gaze of the ancient griffins, most of the geniuses standing behind Zhuowen lowered their heads subconsciously, not daring to look at the two ancient griffins. Even Qin Batian and Ling Wushuang couldn't hold on for long and lowered their heads as well. Apart from Lu Hantian and Lu Nantian, only Lv Yitao, Zhuowen, Luo Xing and Qing Lian didn't lower their heads. These ancient griffins are indeed worthy of having an ancient bloodline. Just their gaze alone has the ability to intimidate one's mind. Zhuowen was secretly shocked by the terror of the ancient griffins when he felt the people behind him lowering their heads. "Father, why aren't the gates of the imperial capital open?" Lv Yitao furrowed his brows and asked. The imperial capital is an important place in the Qing Xian Empire. It is heavily guarded and is not a place where anyone can enter. Furthermore, this is related to the Battle of the Nine Counties, and there will definitely be more people entering. The imperial capital will naturally be heavily guarded. Lu Nantian explained with a smile. After Lu Nantian said this, Zhuowen and the others nodded their heads. After all, the Battle of the Nine Counties was a grand event of the Qing Xian Empire, and such a grand event would definitely attract countless cultivators. It was inevitable that there would be crooks mixed in with the honest folk. Therefore, it was reasonable for the imperial capital to be heavily guarded. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Suddenly, a group of figures broke through the air and arrived at the open space outside the city gate in an instant. The number of people in this group was similar to Zhuo Wen's group. There were close to 100 people, and they were all quite young. In front of this group of people stood an old man in a white robe. This elder's eyes were as bright as the starry sky. When he opened and closed his eyes, there would always be a burst of light that made it difficult for others to look directly at him. Furthermore, the aura that was faintly emitted from his body was like a 10,000 zhang tall mountain. This elder wasn't simple. "Oh? So it's Brother Nantian. How have you been? I haven't seen you for many years, and your strength has improved a lot. You are actually catching up to this old man. After the group of people stabilized themselves, the elder instantly saw Lu Nantian and laughed. He immediately walked over to Lu Nantian and patted Lu Nanshan's shoulder as they were very familiar with each other. So it's Brother Chiu. I didn't expect you to arrive so early. Looks like you've made ample preparations. LV Nantian also revealed a slight smile as he replied. This person is Chiu Changxing, the county lord of Luyan County, which is adjacent to Qin County. He is slightly stronger than Marquis Lu and is at the mid-stage Mystique Venerable realm. His nickname is Mystique Venerable Luyan, Luo Xing explained to Zhuowen in a low voice, as if he saw the confusion on Zhuowen's face. The county lord of Luyan County? Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded his head. Qin Xian Empire had 9 counties, and Zhuowen had naturally heard of them. This Luyan County was to the left of Muqin County, and the borders of the 2 counties were close to each other. In the last war of the 9 counties, because Lu Hantian was absent, Muqin County was ranked second to last among the 9 counties, and Luyan County was ranked first from the bottom. Perhaps because their rankings were close, the relationship between Lu Yanxian venerate Chiu Changxing and Mu Qinxian venerate Lu Nantian was quite good. This was why Chiu Changxing was so enthusiastic when he saw Lu Nantian. Brother Nantian, don't make fun of me. In the last great war of the 9 counties, it's not like you don't know that our Luyan County was ranked last, so how could we be fully prepared? Speaking up to here, Chiu Changxing's gaze suddenly fell on the shabbily dressed Lu Hantian beside Lu Nantian, and he asked doubtfully, Brother Nantian, who is this? Chiu Changxing knew that someone who could stand side by side with a powerhouse like Lu Nantian was definitely not a nobody, so he asked this question. Haha. This is my big brother, Lu Hantian. My big brother came out from the blood demon inheritance, so I'm sure you've heard about him. Lu Nantian smiled and introduced him to Chiu Changxing quite enthusiastically. Lu Hantian really came out from the blood demon inheritance? When I first heard this news, I wasn't sure, but now it seems that this news is true. Chiu Changxing was stunned at first, but soon a respectful look appeared on his face. He cupped his hands towards Lu Hantian and said, Changxing has always admired Brother Hantian. Now that I've met you in person, it is indeed true that hearing about you is not as good as meeting you in person. Hearing Chiu Changxing's flattering words, Lu Hantian chuckled and pretended to be a lonely master. He pretended to be profound and said, You are too polite. Although I am handsome and elegant, and everyone loves me and flowers bloom when they see me, I usually keep a low profile. Even if I keep a low profile, I was still recognized by you. It seems that one can't be too famous. Lu Hantian, this cheap bastard, bragging to the heavens. As soon as these words came out, Chiu Changxing was stunned and a strange feeling rose in his heart. This Lu Hantian in front of him seemed to be a little crazy. However, he naturally wouldn't say this out loud. He just smiled awkwardly and chatted with Lu Nantian for a while before returning to the Luyan County team and silently waiting for the city gate to open. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He found that the auras of the nearly 100 geniuses in the Luyan County team were clearly weaker than those of the Muqin County team. Standing at the front of the Luyan County team was a young man about the same age as Lu Yitao. This young man had slender limbs and delicate features. He wore a white robe and had a calm and gentle demeanor. At first glance, he looked like a scholar, but Zhuowen found that this young man's aura was much stronger than the others in the team. Moreover, the other geniuses in the Luyan County team looked at this young man with reverence in their eyes. Luyan County's number 1 genius, Qiu Xiaoyun. This person is proficient in palm techniques and has cultivated the transcendent emperor-grade armor skill, Falling Sun Palm. He is very strong and is ranked 32nd on the Azure Emperor list. He is slightly weaker than me, Luo Xing whispered. Zhuowen nodded slightly. The strength of the Luoyang County was indeed much weaker than the Muqing County. The number one genius of the Luoyang County, Qiu Shaoyun, was even weaker than Luo Xing. It was no wonder that the Luoyang County ranked last in the previous battle of the 9 counties. Hong Long Long. Lu Nantian and the others didn't have to wait for long. On both sides of the 10,000-foot-tall city gate, 2 huge ancient griffins roared as if they had received an order. They grabbed the chains on their bodies and began to slowly pull them. The sound of gears turning constantly echoed. Under the pull of the ancient griffins, the 10,000-foot-tall city gate slowly opened from the center to the 2 sides. Da-da-da! The sound of horse hooves suddenly came from within the city gate. Soon after, Zhuowen saw a group of armored cultivators riding large horses covered in scales. They rushed out of the city like lightning and arrived in front of the 2 teams in an instant. Even their mounts are draconic horses with ancient bloodlines. This imperial capital is indeed extraordinary. Zhuowen's pupils constricted as he muttered to himself when he saw the large horse covered in scales that the group was sitting on. Greetings, Lord Imperial Guard Commander. After this group of people arrived, Lu Nantian and Qiu Chongxing both bowed respectfully. This group was the Imperial Guard Army of the imperial capital. They were responsible for the safety of the entire imperial capital. The members of this army were all ultimate Emperor realm experts and above. At the very front of the Imperial Guard Army was a burly man who was nearly 2 meters tall and had bulging muscles. This person was the commander of the Imperial Guard Army. His strength was unfathomable, and he was even stronger than Lu Nantian and Qiu Chongxing. He was at least at the sovereign realm. The Imperial Guard commander nodded and said in a clear voice, "Report the origins of your 2 teams. After I confirm it, I will let you in." Lu Nantian and Qiu Chongxing were quite familiar with this situation. They hurriedly took out a jade talisman and slowly handed it to the Imperial Guard commander. The Imperial Guard commander took the 2 jade talismans and took out a bronze mirror from his spirit ring. He then crushed the jade talisman in his hand and lines of small words appeared on the surface of the bronze mirror. Muqing County and Luoyang County? It seems that there is no problem with your origins. You can enter the imperial capital. The Imperial Guard commander nodded and waved his hand. The numerous Imperial Guards behind him lined up neatly on both sides and opened up a path. Your 2 counties should be preparing for the War of the 9 Counties in a month, right? Come with me, I will take you to the resting area. The Imperial Guard commander stared indifferently at Lu Nantian and the others. He directly controlled the dragon horse under his feet and moved forward along the path on both sides. Lu Nantian and the others naturally followed closely behind. The entire geographical location of the imperial capital was within a city. Moreover, it was a city that was hundreds of times larger than a county. Just the city gate alone was tens of thousands of feet tall, which was enough to show how magnificent and terrifying the imperial capital was. After entering the city gate, Zhuowen and the others were presented with a grand street. The street was dozens of feet wide, and there were many stalls on both sides of the street. People were coming and going, and it was very lively. Moreover, Zhuowen also discovered that most of the people walking on the streets of the imperial city had extremely powerful auras. Moreover, the vendors on both sides of the street weren't ordinary vendors either. All of them were actually martial artists with powerful auras. The vendors were actually selling armor skills, spirit medicines, and other things that martial artists needed. The imperial capital is different from other cities. There are basically no civilians in the imperial capital. Everyone in the imperial capital is a warrior, and they are not weak warriors. After all, the imperial capital is where Emperor Qing resides. There are too many people who want to enter the imperial capital. In addition to the rules of the imperial capital, warriors who are not strong enough are not allowed to enter, Luo Xing explained faintly. Hearing this, Zhuowen was relieved. That's right, the entire Qing Xian Empire was so vast, and there were countless cultivators, but there was only one city in the imperial capital. Which cultivator didn't want to enter the imperial capital, or even settle down there? After all, the imperial capital also meant hope and opportunities. There were many powerhouses in the imperial capital. In addition, Emperor Qing was in the imperial capital. Naturally, there were many opportunities in the imperial capital. If an ordinary warrior encountered an opportunity, he could definitely achieve a meteoric rise. Chapter 628. Commander of the Imperial Guard. It's the commander of the Imperial Guard. Quickly make way, don't block the commander's path. After the commander of the Imperial Guard entered the city gates, he immediately attracted the attention of many cultivators on the street. These cultivators all retreated to the sides with reverence in their eyes, making way for the commander of the Imperial Guard. On both sides of the street, many cultivators curiously looked at the many geniuses from Luoyan County and Muqin County behind the commander of the Imperial Guard. They knew that these two teams should be from 2 of the 9 counties. They should have come to the imperial capital to participate in the War of the 9 counties. It seems that the Imperial Guard has quite a high prestige in the imperial capital. Zhuo was rather surprised when he sensed the reverence in the eyes of the cultivators around him. He could sense quite a few powerful cultivators among this group of cultivators. They should be at least ultimate 9th wheel Emperor Realm cultivators. Even such masters could consciously make way for them, and even show such reverence in their eyes. It was obvious that the Imperial Guard had a great reputation in the imperial capital. Of course, the Imperial Guard is a powerful army personally raised by Emperor Qing. Although there aren't many of them, they are all elites. Usually, the Imperial Guard represents the will of Emperor Qing himself. How could these cultivators not respect them? Lv Tao turned around and explained softly. Personally raised by Emperor Qing? That explains it. Hearing this, Zhuo nodded. He knew that if the Imperial Guard was really raised by Emperor Qing, it would be normal for them to have such a reputation in the imperial capital. Deng deng deng. The crisp sound of horse hooves slowly sounded on the street. The commander of the Imperial Guard rode on a tall dragon horse. Under the reverent gazes of countless cultivators, he led the 2 teams from Luoyan County and Muqin County into the depths of the imperial capital. The imperial capital was vast and endless. In the center of the imperial capital, there was a terrifying palace that looked like a giant beast. Just this palace alone occupied a quarter of the imperial capital. The exterior of the palace was resplendent and magnificent. Above the palace, countless auras surged and converged, faintly forming a terrifying gigantic dragon. This was the manifestation of a grand momentum, the convergence of monarch Qi. This huge and magnificent palace was the imperial capital. It was where the imperial family, the strongest power in the imperial capital, resided. In the imperial capital, the only emperor of the Qing Xian dynasty, Emperor Qing, was overseeing the imperial capital. Feeling the terrifying aura above the imperial capital, Zhuo couldn't help but turn pale. This aura was too powerful. Zhuo felt powerless to resist it. Is this the terror of an Emperor Realm Master? Just the aura that flowed out was enough to intimidate me, Zhuo muttered with a shocked expression. The faces of the other geniuses in the team weren't any better. When they first came into contact with the Emperor's aura above the imperial capital, they more or less felt a sense of awe and discomfort. However, this discomfort didn't last long. The commander of the Imperial Guard, who was walking at the front, waved his right hand and a green light sprinkled over everyone behind him. Suddenly, the discomfort disappeared. Don't stare at the dragon aura above the imperial capital. That's the Emperor's aura of His Majesty Emperor Qing. Your cultivation is too low. If you're not careful, I'm afraid you'll suffer internal injuries. By then, it'll be too late to regret. The commander of the Imperial Guard said coldly. Hearing this, everyone in the team hurriedly lowered their heads and no longer dared to look at the dragon-shaped aura above the imperial capital. At the same time, they were shocked by the strength of Emperor Qing. Just the aura alone was enough to make them feel oppressed. If they were to face Emperor Qing in person, wouldn't it be even more terrifying? The commander of the Imperial Guard didn't lead the two teams into the Imperial capital. Instead, he stopped at a square about a kilometer away from the Imperial capital. The square was extremely large, and there were tadpole-shaped runes on the ground. These runes revealed traces of a strange aura. This is the Realm Suppression Formation. It's the only transmission point to the Imperial capital. The Battle of the Nine Counties will begin in a month, so the Realm Suppression Formation won't be opened until a month later. Today, I brought you here just to let you familiarize yourself with the Realm Suppression Formation. During this 1 month, we won't restrict your movements in the Imperial capital. Moreover, you'll have to find your own accommodation. 1 month later, come to the Realm Suppression Formation on time. At that time, you'll be transported into the Imperial capital. Remember, the time limit is 1 month. This Battle of the Nine Counties is very important. It's personally presided over by the Qing Emperor. The commander of the Imperial Guard glanced at the people around him coldly. Finally, his eyes stopped at the front of the team from Muqin County, where the extremely sloppy Lu Hantian was. He actually felt a threatening aura from this person. He didn't notice it earlier, but now that he looked carefully, he realized that this sloppy old beggar's aura was faintly leaking out. It actually made him a little scared. At this moment, Lu Hantian picked his nose. He also noticed the gaze of the commander of the Imperial Guard. He hurriedly made a pose and revealed a lonely expression. He sighed softly and said, "People who are too handsome are like this. Even if they want to keep a low profile, they will inadvertently attract the attention and admiration of others." When Lu Hantian's words came out, the expressionless commander of the Imperial Guard's face suddenly twitched. How could this guy be so narcissistic? How strong was his heart to be able to say that he was handsome every time he opened his mouth? In Muqin County's team, many geniuses covered their faces in shame and didn't dare to look at Lu Hantian. Their expressions were as if they didn't know this guy. This Lu Hantian was too embarrassing for Muqin County. He actually dared to brag in front of the commander of the Imperial Guard. As for the people from Luoyan County, they all looked at the old beggar who was still posing with a strange expression. Their expressions weren't any better. The commander of the Imperial Guard shook his head and didn't pay any more attention to Lu Hantian. Instead, he gave a few more instructions about the Realm Suppression Formation before he patted his horse's belly and disappeared with the rest of the Imperial Guard. "Nan Tian, Han Tian, my two brothers. This old master will first take these little guys to find a place to stay. Why don't you two come with me? At that time we can take care of each other," Qiu Chongxing said with a smile. Qiu Chongxing's eyes flashed. He was very clear that their Luoyan County was ranked at the bottom of the 9 great counties. However, Muqin County was different. Although Muqin County was ranked at the bottom in the last tournament, that was because Lu Hantian wasn't there. Qiu Chongxing was very clear that if Lu Hantian had also participated in the 9 counties war, Muqin County's ranking would definitely be at the top. Now that Muqin County had Lu Hantian, Qiu Chongxing knew that the rise of Muqin County should be inevitable. Therefore, he naturally wanted to get closer to them. Hearing this, Lu Nantian nodded and immediately looked at Lu Hantian. After all, Lu Hantian was the leader this time. This matter naturally had to be approved by Lu Hantian. Lu Hantian nodded and said, "Old man Qiu is very experienced. I'm afraid that he has been to the imperial capital many times. Following him is a good choice." Hearing this, Qiu Chongxing's face immediately lit up with joy. He turned his head and said to the elegant-looking Qiu Shaoyun behind him, "Shaoyun, you lead the team and walk together with Muqin Marquis team. We need to find a place to stay together." Hearing this, Qiu Shaoyun nodded his head. How could he not understand Qiu Chongxing's meaning? He also knew that Muqin County was not ordinary, especially the 6 people standing at the front. The aura emitted from each of them made him somewhat fearful, especially the white-robed Lui Tao, the cold-looking Luo Xing, and the ordinary-looking Zhuowen with the green coffin on his back. These 3 people actually gave him a faint sense of pressure. Qiu Shaoyun naturally knew Lui Tao and Luo Xing. These 2 were also geniuses on the Azure Emperor list. Moreover, they were ranked above him. Feeling the powerful aura of these 2 people, he knew that his ranking in this Azure Emperor list ranking battle would definitely not surpass theirs. However, the thing that caused him to be surprised was that he had never seen the strange young man carrying the green coffin on his back. Originally, he thought that the young man was a nobody. However, as he observed, he discovered that the aura faintly emitted from the young man's body was actually not weaker than Lve Tao. In fact, from a certain point of view, the young man was even fiercer than Lve Tao. This young man is not simple. Qiu Shaoyun's eyes flashed. With a refined smile on his face, he led the team from Luoyan County and merged with Muqin County's team. The relationship between the 2 counties was originally good. Although most of these geniuses did not know each other, they became more familiar with each other after chatting for a while. The number of conversations gradually increased. Qiu Shaoyun had a refined smile on his face. He cupped his hands politely to Lui Tao and Luo Xing and said, "Brother Lu, Miss Luo Xing, we meet again. Judging from your auras, you have improved a lot in the past few years. May I know what your cultivation is now?" Lui Tao's face was indifferent. He cupped his hands and replied, "Brother Qiu is too polite. I was just lucky. I just happened to break through to the ultimate emperor realm some time ago. As for Sister Luo Xing, she's not bad either. She's reached the peak of the ultimate emperor realm and is not far from the ultimate emperor realm." Qiu Shaoyun's face twitched. Although he had already guessed it, he was still shocked after confirming it. He shook his head and sighed, "The 2 of you are indeed geniuses. This time, Brother Lu should be able to enter the top 15 of the Azure Emperor list. Miss Luo Xing should also be able to enter the top 30. With the 2 of you, Muqin County's results will definitely improve a lot." Speaking of this, Qiu Shaoyun's eyes revealed a trace of envy. "Brother Qiu, that's not right. The 2 of us are not the strongest representatives of Muqin County this time." Lui Tao shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Not the 2 of you? Could it be that there is someone stronger?" Qiu Shaoyun's face turned solemn. Lui Tao and Luo Xing's cultivations were already terrifying enough. Yet Lui Tao said that they were not the strongest. "Let me introduce them to you. He is Zhuowen. In terms of cultivation, he is the same as me. However, in terms of strength, I am not as good as him. Zhuowen is the strongest representative of Muqin County this time." Lui Tao pointed at Zhuowen and said indifferently. Chapter 629. Spring Intoxication Pavilion. Let me introduce him. He's Zhuowen. He's stronger than me, so he's the dark horse of our Muqin County this time. Lve Tao smiled and pointed at Zhuowen as he spoke to Qiu Shaoyun. "Nice to meet you, Brother Zhuo. I never thought that Brother Zhuo would be hiding his strength so well." Qiu Shaoyun grinned. Qiu Shaoyun grinned. Although his attitude was polite, there was no sincerity in it. In his opinion, although the aura emitted from Zhuo Wen's body was slightly threatening, it was far from being as strong as Lve Tao and Luo Xing. As a result, he believed that Lve Tao was purposely trying to confuse him so that he could not identify the strongest representative of Muqin County. Zhuowen's senses were far sharper than ordinary people's, so he obviously saw the disapproval in Qiu Shaoyun's eyes. However, he did not pursue the matter. Instead, he nodded and smiled at Qiu Shaoyun as a form of greeting. Zhuowen's attitude caused Qiu Shaoyun to frown slightly as he felt slightly uncomfortable in his heart. However, he did not pay too much attention to it. Instead, He quietly chatted with Lv Tao about some trivial matters and did not pay much attention to Zhuowen. In Qiu Shaoyun's opinion, the strongest representative of Muqin County was without a doubt Lv Tao, so he obviously had to establish a good relationship with him. Zhuowen also noticed Qiu Shaoyun's little actions, but he didn't care. He just smirked and silently followed the group. Qiu Chongxing was obviously very familiar with the imperial city. After passing through several streets and alleys, he arrived in front of a rather luxurious loft. Above the loft there was a signboard, and on the signboard were 3 large words: Intoxicated Spring Pavilion. At this moment the sky had darkened. The sun was setting in the west, and night silently descended. The Spring Intoxication Pavilion was extremely large, spanning over 100 kilometers. There were many pavilions within, and there were many lights. At this moment, there were 2 rows of gorgeously dressed young women standing at the entrance of the Spring Intoxication Pavilion. They winked at the passers-by with every frown and smile, attracting a lot of people. Looking at the overall structure of the Drunken Spring Pavilion, Zhuowen frowned slightly. From the name, this Drunken Spring Pavilion should be a place of romance. Why did Qiu Chongxing bring them here? Qiu Chongxing coughed dryly, as if he had sensed the many astonished gazes behind him. Everyone, please don't misunderstand. This intoxicated spring pavilion is not what you think it is. The ladies inside are all courtesans who sell their skills and not their bodies. Moreover, the Drunken Spring Pavilion is also the largest inn in the imperial capital. There are many rooms inside, and there are many ways to entertain yourself. In the entire imperial capital, it can be considered an extremely famous place. Moreover, many high-ranking officials and dignitaries of the imperial city will come to the Drunken Spring Pavilion. If you're lucky, you might be able to get to know quite a few people from the imperial city. At this point, Qiu Chongxing's eyes revealed a glimmer of light. The others also revealed expressions of understanding. So this was Qiu Chongxing's goal. He wanted to use this place to get to know his connections in the imperial city. Although Qiu Chongxing said so, many of the women in the group frowned, and a trace of displeasure appeared on their faces. Good. Brother Qiu, you really know how to pick a place. I like this place the most. Lu Hantian suddenly laughed loudly, causing many people to roll their eyes at him. Let's go in. There are at least 200 people in our group. There aren't many inns in the imperial capital that can accommodate so many people, and this Drunken Spring Pavilion is one of them. Qiu Chongxing smiled and led the group into the Drunken Spring Pavilion. Guess please. Are you all here to stay? After entering through the door, a middle-aged woman who still retained her charm walked over with a smile while waving a cattail leaf fan. Her rouged face was filled with enthusiasm. Especially when she saw the large group of people behind Qiu Chongxing, this middle-aged woman's eyes shone. If so many people stayed, their Drunken Spring Pavilion would be able to earn a large sum of money. Therefore, this middle-aged woman became even more enthusiastic. And help us prepare a room each. Although we have quite a number of people, your Drunken Spring Pavilion isn't small either. You should be able to take out so many rooms, right? Qiu Chongxing said with a faint smile. No problem. Sir, you made the right choice by choosing our Drunken Spring Pavilion. In the imperial capital, there aren't many people who don't know the name of the Drunken Spring Pavilion. Men, quickly arrange rooms for this group of gentlemen. The middle-aged woman coquettishly winked at Qiu Chongxing, then waved the cattail leaf fan in her right hand. A terrifying force exploded, and the originally tightly shut rooms in the pavilion were instantly opened by this force. Then, one after another, graceful young women walked out of the rooms. This middle-aged woman isn't simple. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly. The aura that this middle-aged woman had unintentionally released just now was rather terrifying. It was probably comparable to Su Chang's back then. Clearly, this middle-aged woman should be an ultimate ninth wheel Emperor realm expert. This Drunken Spring Pavilion wasn't simple. Just this madam who welcomed the guests was actually an ultimate ninth wheel Emperor realm expert. He really didn't know how powerful the owner of this drunken spring pavilion was. Alright, mother, we're coming. Yo. There are quite a few guests today, and there are quite a few handsome men among them. The young women who walked out of the rooms all had charming smiles on their faces as they constantly sized up the numerous geniuses behind Qiu Changsheng. Many of the young women's eyes were filled with lust, and their words were flirtatious. Many of the young men in the group immediately blushed, causing the women to giggle. Zhuowen couldn't help but look at this group of young women, and a trace of admiration appeared in his eyes. This group of women was quite young, and their cultivation wasn't high either. Perhaps it was because their talent wasn't high that they'd entered the drunken spring pavilion. Although the cultivations of these young women were low, all of them knew how to display their charm and gentleness. Their every frown and smile was just right, causing many men to be unable to help but become absent-minded. Even Lve Tao, who had an indifferent expression, revealed a trace of surprise in his eyes. Men are all bad. Suddenly, a clear and cold voice slowly sounded out. Zhuowen followed the voice and immediately saw Luo Xing's pretty face covered in frost. At this moment, her beautiful eyes were coldly staring at Zhuowen with a trace of hostility. Zhuowen was startled. He didn't expect Luo Xing's reaction to be so big. Even Qing Lian, who was standing beside Luo Xing, had a trace of hostility in her beautiful eyes at this moment. She similarly stared at Zhuowen, causing Zhuowen to be confused. On the other hand, Lve Tao and Qiu Shaoyun instantly blushed after hearing Luo Xing's words. They turned their faces away and no longer looked at the young women in the pavilion. Zhuowen shrugged his shoulders and didn't feel anything. He didn't have any improper thoughts in his heart. He clearly knew that these women who had given themselves to a place like the drunken spring pavilion were all pitiful people. Besides admiration, there was also a trace of pity in his eyes. A rare trace of anger surfaced on Luo Xing's pretty face when she saw Zhuowen's indifferent attitude. She coldly snorted in a low voice and was actually sulking. On the other hand, Qing Lian shook her head and didn't say anything. However, one could tell from Qing Lian's expression that she wasn't in a good mood either. Ladies, quickly arrange rooms for these men. Remember, you must arrange for the best rooms. The middle-aged woman looked at the many stunned geniuses in the group and immediately smiled beautifully. The palm leaf fan in her hand continuously waved. Ah! The young women in the pavilion immediately laughed and ran down the pavilion. They all enthusiastically pulled the geniuses in the group and wanted to lead them to the rooms. Hey! Why didn't I bring any girls? This isn't fair. This is blatant discrimination. The young women basically chose the young geniuses. As for Lu Hantian, Lu Nantian, and Qiu Changxing, they were ignored. The three of them were old men and naturally wouldn't be welcomed by these young women. Lu Hantian wasn't happy and boasted shamelessly. With this shout, the young women in the surrounding immediately distanced themselves from him. Lu Hantian's appearance was like an old beggar. Which girl would want to get close to this guy? However, the charming middle-aged woman's beautiful eyes flickered. She could faintly feel the terrifying aura emitted from Lu Hantian's body. She immediately smiled and said, "The three of you can follow me. In any case, the rooms aren't far from here. Then I'll have to trouble you." Qiu Changxing laughed loudly and led Lu Hantian and Lu Nantian to follow behind the middle-aged woman. The group behind them were all led by beauties and followed behind the middle-aged woman. "Young master, can you let my daughter lead you?" A young woman around 15 years old dressed in an emerald green dress came to Zhuowen's side at this moment. Her large watery eyes secretly sized up Zhuowen. Her sparkling cheeks revealed a trace of crimson, but it was more of curiosity. The young man in front of her was carrying a strange green coffin. His temperament was outstanding and his body revealed traces of mystery. All of these attracted the young woman's gaze. Therefore, she took the initiative to choose Zhuowen to lead him to the rooms. Yes. Then I'll have to trouble you. Zhuowen revealed a trace of a gentle smile, and said rather politely. It's no trouble. Young master can just follow me. My name is Miao Lu. Young master can just call me Lu. Lu revealed a trace of a bashful smile, and very naturally took Zhuowen's right hand and pulled Zhuowen deeper inside. Is the way your drunken spring pavilion welcomes guests? Zhuowen was somewhat speechless towards this way of welcoming guests, so he opened his mouth and asked. Yes, this is the way my mother set up to welcome guests. Because most of the guests who stay in the drunken spring pavilion are male, female welcoming guests is more attractive. Like us, our only function is to go out and welcome guests and serve them. As long as we serve them well, then we can receive rewards. Lu's personality was rather lively and wasn't afraid of strangers at all. After chatting with Zhuowen for a while, she got along well and even giggled from time to time. Did you enter the drunken spring pavilion willingly? Zhuowen's eyes flickered as he suddenly asked. Yes, we all did it willingly. Actually, the drunken spring pavilion isn't a place of romance like young master thinks. The women here are all multi-talented and only sell their skills and not their bodies. It's a place of entertainment for many high officials and nobles in the imperial city. Mother said before that since ancient times, heroes have loved beauties. Being able to have the company of beauties while drinking wine and composing poetry naturally adds a great deal of elegance. Lu giggled. Chapter 630. Spirit Stones. The drunken spring pavilion was divided into two areas, named Wind Flower and Snow Moon. The Wind Flower area was where the courtesans of the drunken spring pavilion played the zither and sang, providing entertainment for the high officials and dignitaries. The Snow Moon area was made up of many pavilions, specifically for the guests to stay in. Mother Su took the lead and led the mighty group through the Wind Flower district. It had to be said that the Wind Flower district was indeed bustling with activity. In the center of the Wind Flower district stood a huge circular stage. On the stage, graceful figures danced gracefully like butterflies in the depths of the flower bushes. On the other side of the stage were rows of pavilions. There were many figures sitting in the pavilions, drinking fine wine and chatting as they admired the graceful figures of the dancers on the stage. As the two groups passed by, many geniuses looked enviously at the high officials and dignitaries enjoying themselves in the Wind Flower area. Zhuowen sneered inwardly. He knew that these people who only cared about enjoying themselves were basically second-generation young masters, without the slightest bit of the heart of a powerhouse. If they had the heart of a powerhouse, they wouldn't waste their time on such meaningless enjoyment. After passing through the Wind Flower district, Mother Su led the group to the Shuiyu district. Unlike the Wind Flower district, the Shuiyu district was much quieter. There were many pavilions and pavilions in the Shuiyu district. Inside the pavilions there were many rooms. There were at least 1,000 pavilions. How spectacular! There are actually so many rooms here. Looking at the densely packed pavilions, Zhuowen's eyes lit up. Qiu Chongxing was right. There were indeed a lot of rooms in the Drunken Spring Pavilion. There were actually over 1,000 rooms, enough to accommodate 1,000 people. Mother Su, you're still so efficient. This mid-grade spirit stone should be enough to pay for our lodging, right? Qiu Chongxing smiled and threw out a palm-sized, sparkling, translucent stone with a threatening spirit qi into Mother Su's hand. Oh, Uncle Qiu is too polite. These mid-grade spirit stones are enough. Daughters, quickly bring your husbands to their rooms. You must serve them well in their daily lives. Holding the mid-grade spirit stones, Mother Su immediately smiled charmingly and hurriedly gave orders to the young girls below. Mom, don't worry. Your daughter will serve you with all her heart. When they finished talking, the young women took their geniuses to the pavilions in the Shuiyu area. They were probably going to pick a pavilion for them. Spirit stones? At this moment, Zhuowen's gaze was fixed on the spirit stone in the woman's hand. His eyes were full of light. The aura emitted by this spirit stone gave Zhuowen a very familiar feeling. This spirit stone actually contains spiritual qi. Narrowing his eyes, Zhuowen finally realized why the aura of the spirit stone was so familiar. Back when he was at the Zhongling Mountain in the Yuanqi Pagoda, he had absorbed a lot of spirit qi in the Zhongling Mountain and had broken through to the beginner level of the Great Sun Nirvana technique. Spiritual energy was a type of energy that was of a higher grade. He did not expect that the so-called spirit stones would contain this type of spiritual energy. Young master, let me take you to your room. In the future, Luer will help you take care of your daily life. Beside him, Luer was rather obedient. Since Zhuowen didn't move, she also didn't move. She just quietly stayed by Zhuowen's side. And, Luer, do you know what that spirit stone is? Zhuowen suddenly asked. When Luer heard this, there was a trace of doubt in her beautiful eyes. She seemed to be surprised that Zhuowen actually didn't know about spirit stones. However, she didn't care too much and said, "Spirit stones are the common currency of the imperial capital. These spirit stones are divided into low-grade spirit stones, mid-grade spirit stones, high-grade spirit stones, and transcendent-grade spirit stones. Spirit stones contain spiritual qi. This spiritual qi is very beneficial to the four Venerable Realm experts. It is something that the four Venerable Realm experts must have. Perhaps in other counties, spirit stones should be more commonly seen on the four Venerable Realm experts. However, the imperial capital is under the jurisdiction of the Qing Emperor. It has long since unified the currency and uses spirit stones for transactions. The value of spirit stones is extremely high. It is said that a low-grade spirit stone is equivalent to 10,000 imperial essence pills. In the imperial capital, as long as you have enough spirit stones, you can basically buy anything. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded in relief. No wonder he had never heard of spirit stones before. It turned out that only the four Venerable Realm experts possessed spirit stones in Muqin County. Only in the imperial capital did spirit stones become a unified currency. Luer, do you have any spirit stones on you? Thinking up to here, Zhuowen suddenly asked Luer. I do. However, Luer doesn't have a lot of spirit stones on me. I only have a total of 5 low-grade spirit stones. Luer has saved these spirit stones from last year until now. Luer was rather naive and unaffected. She actually didn't hide anything from Zhuowen. This made Zhuowen have a rather good impression of her. Since Luer could still maintain such a naive character, this intoxicated spring pavilion probably treated these young girls quite well. With a flip of his right hand, a golden ginseng appeared in Zhuowen's hand. He smiled and said, "This is a third-grade spirit medicine, the ginseng treasure fruit. Can it be exchanged for the 5 spirit stones in your hand?" Zhuowen still decided to study spirit stones. If spirit stones really did contain spiritual qi, perhaps it would be quite beneficial to his great Nirvana Sunday. One had to know that his great Nirvana Sun had relied on this spiritual qi to break through to the entry level. Third-grade spirit medicine? Looking at the ginseng treasure fruit with a threatening medicinal aura in Zhuowen's hand, Luer's beautiful eyes widened. She hurriedly shook her head and said, "Young master, a third-grade spirit medicine is at least worth 20 low-grade spirit stones. This ginseng treasure fruit of yours has a dense medicinal aura. I'm afraid it's the best among third-grade spirit medicines. Its value is even higher. I can't take advantage of you." Hearing this, the smile at the corners of Zhuowen's mouth became even gentler. This Luer's temperament wasn't bad. She actually flatly refused to take advantage of him. Zhuowen's favorable impression of her increased quite a bit. "Don't worry. Being able to casually take out a third-grade spirit medicine means that I have quite a few spirit medicines on me. I only want to use spirit stones to study it. Just exchange with me," Zhuowen said sincerely. Luer hesitated for a moment when she heard this, then said, "All right then. Young master, consider this as Luer owing you a favor this time. If young master really needs spirit stones so much, You can totally go to the Imperial Capital's appraiser hall to exchange for spirit stones. As long as it's a treasure, the appraiser hall will accept it. Moreover, the price they offer is also very fair. There's such a place in the Imperial Capital? That's fine. Bring me to the appraiser hall to take a look tomorrow. Take this ginseng treasure fruit. Zhuowen smiled lightly and stuffed the spirit medicine into Luer's hand. Then thank you very much, young master. These are the spirit stones Luer saved up. Luer grinned as she received the spirit medicine, then withdrew 5 spirit stones from the universe pouch at her waist and passed them to Zhuowen. Moreover, Zhuowen also clearly felt that Luer had become much closer to him. Obviously, his gift of the spirit medicine earlier caused Luer's favorable impression of him to greatly increase. Young master, let's go, I'll bring you to the side room. After the two of them finished exchanging spirit stones, Luer pulled Zhuowen into the Snow Moon district. After choosing an elegant side room in one of the pavilions, they were just about to enter the side room when Luo Xing, who had a cold expression, just happened to come out from the room beside Zhuowen's. The two of them glanced at each other, then Luo Xing's beautiful eyes landed on Luer, who was pulling Zhuowen's hand. Her beautiful eyes contained traces of coldness, and with a cold snort, she actually directly brushed past Zhuowen. Sensing Luo Xing's baffling attitude, Zhuowen was somewhat at a loss. He didn't seem to have offended Luo Xing before, so why did this girl seem to be very unhappy with him? Luer, on the other hand, was exceptionally intelligent as she secretly laughed and said, "Young master, that young lady just now was very beautiful. Such a girl is rare even in the Imperial Capital. She's beautiful, but unfortunately she's a rose with thorns." Now, her attitude is even a bit baffling. Zhuowen shook his head and said helplessly, "A woman's heart was truly like a needle at the bottom of the ocean." He completely didn't understand. Was that beautiful big sister just now jealous and angry? I'm afraid that big sister likes you, young master. Luer's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of craftiness as she said with a smile. Likes me? Zhuowen shook his head and continued, "Luer, I'm afraid that you're thinking too much. Luo Xing isn't the kind of girl that easily likes men. Moreover," speaking up to here, Mu Qinshue's alluring face involuntarily surfaced in Zhuowen's mind, and the corners of his mouth revealed a faint smile. Looks like young master's heart already belongs to someone. The one that young master likes is definitely even more beautiful than that big sister just now, right? Luer suddenly laughed delicately. Hearing this, Zhuowen's expression was slightly embarrassed, and he shook his head and said, "Now isn't the time to talk about this. Luer had better hurry up and open this room." Luer giggled and took out the key to open the room door. After that, she lit a candle within the room. Instantly, the originally pitch-black room became brightly lit. Sizing up the room's surroundings, Zhuowen nodded slightly. This room was rather spacious, and the furnishings in the surroundings were also extremely elegant and simple. A wisp of delicate fragrance drifted within, and sniffing it carefully, it immediately made one feel relaxed and happy. "Luer, you withdraw first. Come back tomorrow morning and bring me to the treasure appraising pavilion." Looking around the room, Zhuowen instructed Luer, and Luer obediently left the room. After Luer left, Zhuowen silently sat cross-legged on the bed. He first regulated the aura in his dantian before taking out 5 pieces of sparkling and translucent stones from his spirit ring. They were precisely the spirit stones that he exchanged from Luer. Silently gazing at the 5 spirit stones before him, Zhuowen's gaze flickered, and he casually took one of the spirit stones. Instantly, a cool and refreshing energy passed through his palm and bore into his body. It was precisely that familiar spirit energy. This spirit energy passed through Zhuowen's meridians and bore into the space between Zhuowen's brows, and it actually faintly strengthened the mental energy within his Naiwen palace. There really is spirit energy inside. This spirit energy is even able to nourish the mental energy within my Naiwen palace. After discovering that what the spirit stone contained was indeed spirit energy, Zhuowen became rather excited and started to ceaselessly absorb the spirit energy within the spirit stone. Gotcha! In a short while, the spirit stone in his hand was completely exhausted, and it transformed into an ordinary stone before shattering into powder in Zhuowen's hand. After the spirit stone shattered, Zhuowen continued to use the next spirit stone. After roughly the time for half an incense stick to burn, all 5 spirit stones were completely absorbed by Zhuowen, but Zhuowen's face revealed an expression of wanting more. Chapter 631. Treasure Inspecting Pavilion. Early in the morning, a cool breeze brushed past. Warm sunlight penetrated through the clouds and spilled onto the ground, causing the chilly morning to become warm and gentle. Dong dong dong. A clear knocking sound sounded out. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes, and a trace of light flashed past his eyes as he said in a clear voice, "Come in." Creak. The door opened and Luer, who wore a green dress and had a hot figure, entered the room with a basin of hot water. "Young master, wash up. Did you rest well yesterday?" Luer placed the basin on the table and looked at Zhuowen with a grin. "Not bad." The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled up slightly. He took the towel that Luer handed over and casually washed up before saying, "Luer, bring me to the treasure inspecting pavilion today. Right now I'm in need of spirit stones." "Young master, don't be anxious. Luer will first tidy up your clothes, then bring you to the treasure inspecting pavilion." Luer grinned as she arrived before Zhuowen and very carefully tidied up his clothes for Zhuowen. Zhuowen was slightly stunned, and his face revealed a trace of awkwardness. He was used to being alone and was really not used to the feeling of being served by others. However, he also knew that Luer's job was to serve him, so he did not refuse. "Young master, you seem to be a bit nervous. Have you never been served before?" Luer's eyes revealed a trace of craftiness as she giggled. Hearing this, Zhuowen helplessly shook his head. This Luer really dared to say anything and was completely without the slightest bit scheming. However, such a lack of scheming caused Zhuowen to have a rather good impression of Luer. After tidying up his clothes, Luer brought Zhuowen out of the room and walked towards the treasure inspecting pavilion within the imperial capital. The treasure inspecting pavilion was not very far from the Drunken Spring Pavilion. Luer and Zhuowen only spent half an incense stick's time to arrive before the treasure inspecting pavilion. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a trace of shock as he stared at the enormous tower-like building in front of him. He had heard from Luer that the inspection treasure hall had a total of 4 floors. However, he did not expect it to be so majestic. The entrance to the appraiser hall was bustling with people. Most of them were cultivators with powerful auras, and there was no lack of ultimate Emperor Realm experts amongst them. Zhuowen felt as if he was in a dream when he saw so many ultimate Emperor Realm experts around him. It was almost impossible to see so many ultimate Emperor Realm experts in the capital of Muqin County. Moreover, they were all strolling around in groups. Perhaps only the imperial capital of the entire Qin Xian Empire would be able to achieve such a scale. At the entrance of the appraiser hall stood 2 burly men who looked like iron towers. The 2 of them stared coldly at the people entering and exiting the hall. "Stop. The appraiser hall isn't a place that just anyone can enter. Little brother, do you have an invitation from the appraiser masters in the appraiser hall?" When Zhuowen arrived at the entrance, a robust man instantly stretched out his hand to stop Zhuowen and asked indifferently, "Must I have an invitation to enter the appraiser hall?" His brows furrowed slightly. He did not expect that an invitation would be required to enter the appraiser hall. This was his first time here, so how could he possibly have an invitation? If you don't have an invitation, you will also have the qualifications to enter as long as your strength has reached the ultimate Emperor realm or above. You are so young, the robust man shook his head. When he saw how young Zhuowen was, he subconsciously felt that it was unlikely that Zhuowen had reached the ultimate Emperor realm. Therefore, he decisively stopped him. Zhuowen was slightly startled when he heard this. No wonder only powerful Ultimate Emperor Realm experts entered the appraiser hall. So there was such a rule. Zhuowen shook his head. Just as he was about to reveal the aura within his body, a mocking laughter slowly rang out. I really don't know where this country boy came from. He doesn't even know the rules of the appraiser hall and dares to come here and make a fool of himself. When this voice rang out, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly. He immediately turned his head and saw two slender and elegant figures appear behind him. One of the figures was about 22 years old. She was dressed in green silk and her hair was tied up in a bun. Her delicate skin was as flawless as snow, and there was a trace of coldness between her brows. She had an unapproachable look on her face. The other figure stood beside the ice-cold woman. She was about the same age as Zhuowen, but her looks were much worse than the ice-cold woman's. Her appearance was rather ordinary. At this moment, the younger woman had a mocking smile on her face as she stared calmly at Zhuowen. Zhuowen knew that the words just now should have been said by this ordinary-looking woman. However, what surprised Zhuowen was that these two women were wearing Arcana Master's robes. The ordinary-looking woman had 3 stars embroidered on her chest, indicating that she was a rank 3 Arcana Master. This woman's natural talent wasn't bad. She wasn't even 20 years old, yet her spiritual force was already at the 3rd grade. She could be considered a genius. What surprised Zhuowen was that the woman with an icy expression wore a white robe that was like a flawless white lotus, and there were actually 4 stars embroidered on her chest. This woman was actually a rank 4 Arcana Master. I truly never imagined that Miss Huang Fu and Miss Jingyun would actually come to the appraiser hall. It's truly our honor. Ladies, please come in. The 2 robust men that were originally cold and indifferent had a great change in attitude. Their originally cold and indifferent expressions were completely replaced by enthusiasm, and they even revealed a trace of flattering smiles. Huang Fu. When she heard the surname Huang Fu, Luer, who was standing beside Zhuowen, trembled. Zhuowen felt Luer's unusual behavior, and his brows knit together slightly as his gaze landed on Luer. Young Master. Huang Fu is the surname of a direct descendant of the imperial family. I'm afraid that Miss Huang Fu is a member of the imperial family. It's best if we try our best not to offend her, Luer said somewhat worriedly. The 2 women slowly walked past Zhuowen. The woman with an icy expression didn't even look at Zhuowen from beginning to end. Perhaps in her opinion, Zhuowen wasn't even worthy of her attention. Ladies, please come in. The 2 robust men hurriedly and enthusiastically gestured for them to enter. Their attitudes were extremely respectful and submissive. I say, the 2 of them don't have an invitation letter, nor have they reached the pinnacle of the 5-wheel Emperor realm, right? Are you going to let them in just like that? Then wouldn't the appraiser hall's rules exist in name only? Just as the 2 women were about to enter, Zhuowen's unhurried voice rang out, causing the 2 women's movements to stiffen. Their beautiful eyes simultaneously focused on the indifferent young man who was carrying a green coffin on his back. As expected of an ignorant brat. The ordinary-looking woman crossed her arms in front of her chest and stared at Zhuowen mockingly, as if she was waiting to watch a good show. As for the indifferent woman, she watched coldly from the sidelines. A hint of mockery also appeared in her beautiful eyes. Brat, you better watch your mouth. How can you compare to Miss Huang Fu and Miss Jingyun? Both of them are geniuses of the Imperial Capital's Arcane Guild. Also, I forgot to tell you, Arcanists can freely enter the appraiser hall. Tell me. Firstly, your cultivation isn't high enough. Secondly, you don't have an invitation letter. Thirdly, you're not an Arcanist. Do you think you have the qualifications to enter the appraiser hall? Let me give you a piece of advice. If you don't want to suffer, get lost as soon as possible. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite. The 2 robust men immediately glared at Zhuowen fiercely. In their hearts, they secretly thought that this young man really didn't know what was good for him. Must he suffer a little before he is satisfied? At this moment, Luer, who was standing beside Zhuowen, was trembling slightly. She hugged Zhuowen's arm tightly and hid behind him. The two robust men looked ferocious. Since Luer was still young, she naturally felt terrified. My cultivation isn't high enough? I'm not an arcanist? Which dog eye of yours saw that I don't have the qualifications to enter? Or are both of your dog eyes blind? You think I don't have the qualifications to enter without being verified? Zhuowen straightened his back and spoke coldly. As soon as these words were spoken, the two robust men were stunned. Then, they revealed furious expressions. Instantly, a terrifying aura erupted from their bodies. Both of them were actually five-wheel ultimate Emperor Realm cultivators. Brat, if you're here to cause trouble in the appraiser hall, let me give you a piece of advice. Otherwise, the two of us really won't be polite. At that time, you'll regret it. The two robust men glared coldly at Zhuowen with sinister gazes. Regret? Zhuowen sneered repeatedly. He lightly patted the green coffin with his right hand. Instantly, the coffin lid opened a crack. A terrifying pressure descended at the entrance of the appraiser hall like a towering mountain. The surrounding air instantly froze. Plop! The ferocious expressions on the two robust men's faces had long been restrained. Instead, they were replaced by terrified expressions. Under this pressure, they directly knelt on the ground. They struggled with all their might but were unable to break free. How is this possible? How can there be such a terrifying pressure? What cultivation level does this brat have? The two burly men kneeling on the ground were filled with fear and remorse. They could not imagine that Zhuowen was able to release such a terrifying pressure. The expressions of the two women standing behind the burly man finally changed. Although the pressure was not directed at them, even the aftermath of the pressure was enough to make the two women shudder in fear. This was especially so for the ordinary-looking woman. At this moment, her delicate body was on the verge of collapsing. She actually couldn't stand steadily and was about to fall to the ground. Fortunately, the cold-looking woman acted in time and completely stabilized the woman's body. Tell me, do you think I have the qualifications to enter the appraiser hall now? Zhuowen's foot stomped on the ground. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly as he asked indifferently. At this moment, the two robust men were barely able to support their bodies. Blood flowed out from the corners of their mouth. With great difficulty they said, "Sir, we were blind just now. We didn't know that you were hiding your strength. If we have offended you in any way, please forgive us. Please let us go." Hearing this, Zhuowen coldly snorted. He lightly patted his right hand, and the slit in the green coffin behind him slowly closed. The terrifying pressure also completely disappeared. Only after the pressure disappeared did the two robust men let out a sigh of relief. At this moment, they hurriedly lowered their heads and made an inviting gesture. The young man in front of them was too terrifying. Just the pressure that he released actually made them feel suffocated. At this moment, Luer, who was beside Zhuowen, stared at Zhuowen with her beautiful eyes. Although she knew that Zhuowen was a genius young man who came from another region and was definitely not weak, she didn't expect him to be powerful to such an extent. She had heard that the two robust men guarding the appraiser hall were powerful ultimate five-wheel Emperor Realm cultivators. She didn't expect that they wouldn't even dare to move under Zhuowen's pressure just now. Chapter 632. Three-colored spirit fruit. Shaking his head helplessly, Zhuowen also understood the cruelty of this world where the strong reigned supreme when he sensed the change in attitude of the two burly men. If you didn't have strength, you wouldn't be respected at all. Bringing Luer along, Zhuowen directly brushed past the two women beside him and instantly entered the inspection treasure hall. The cold woman's willowy brows knitted slightly. Zhuowen's disregard made her feel a little uncomfortable in her heart. As for the ordinary-looking woman standing beside her, her beautiful eyes flickered, but in the end, she didn't have the courage to stop Zhuowen. The pressure that Zhuowen released earlier was extremely terrifying. She was very clear that with her strength, she was simply no match for Zhuowen. Senior Huang Fu. This kid doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He even dares to look down on you. Are we going to let him off just like that? The ordinary-looking woman was still somewhat unwilling and whispered to the cold woman. The cold woman shook her head and said, "This time, we came to the inspection treasure hall for the auction on the 4th floor. There's no need to cause unnecessary trouble." Hearing this, the ordinary-looking woman could only nod her head. The status of the cold woman in front of her was much higher than hers. Moreover, the cold woman's talent was also much more outstanding than hers, so she didn't dare to disobey the orders of the cold woman. "Let's go. That kid is just a small fry. There's no need to take him to heart." The cold woman shook her head and immediately led the ordinary-looking woman into the inspection treasure hall. The inspection treasure hall was extremely large. After entering through the door, there was a passageway that was like a long snake. After walking out of the passageway, what appeared in front of Zhuowen was an extremely large hall. At this moment, the hall was bustling with people. At a glance, it was filled with people. Moreover, Zhuowen also discovered that other than cultivators, there were also many arcanists wearing long robes. Moreover, there were quite a number of them. It seems that the scale of the Arcane Guild in the imperial capital is quite large. Just the number of arcanists here has already surpassed the Arcane Guild in Broken Rock City. I wonder where Master Kuraki and the others have gone? At this point, a trace of doubt appeared in Zhuowen's eyes. Before the destruction of Broken Rock City, the Arcane Guild in Broken Rock City had already moved out of the city, and Master Kuraki had naturally left with the Arcane Guild. Until now, Zhuowen had not heard any news about Master Kuraki. Speaking of which, Master Kuraki could be considered as Zhuowen's half-master. Back then, it was Kuraki who introduced Zhuowen to the field of psychic power and discovered Zhuowen's talent in psychic power. "Lu do you know where the Spirit Stone Exchange area is?" Zhuowen knew nothing about the appraiser hall and could only seek help from Lu. Lu isn't too sure either. "Young master, go ask the staff at the counter." Lu scratched her head and said somewhat embarrassedly. She was only a little servant girl in the Drunken Spring Pavilion and did not have the qualifications to enter a place like the appraiser hall. How could she be familiar with the things in the appraiser hall? Nodding, Zhuowen walked straight to a counter. There was an old man with white hair and beard leaning against the counter. He had an indifferent attitude towards the cultivators looking at the items in front of the counter. Zhuowen's arrival did not attract the old man's attention. He only casually glanced at Zhuowen before his eyes became misty, looking as if he had not yet woken up. The old man's attitude caused Zhuowen to be somewhat speechless. In the end, he could only lightly knock on the table and ask, "May I ask, if I need to exchange for spirit stones, where can I exchange spirit stones in the inspection hall?" The old man turned his head slightly and stared at Zhuowen with slight astonishment. He said indifferently, "Are the treasures on you valuable enough? The appraiser hall has a requirement. Only treasures with a value of 50 low-grade spirit stones and above are qualified to exchange for spirit stones. Otherwise, everything is off the table." "I see. This should be enough to prove that I have the qualifications to exchange for spirit stones, right?" Nodding, Zhuowen took out a palm-sized fruit from his spirit ring. It had 3 colors that constantly alternated with each other. A fragrance similar to that of orchids and musk slowly drifted out from the fruit. A 5th-grade elixir, the 3-colored spirit fruit? Looking at the 3-colored spirit fruit in Zhuowen's hand, the old man suddenly stood up. His originally indifferent expression had long disappeared and was replaced by a dignified expression. He did not expect that this young man in front of him would actually be able to take out a 5th-grade elixir. Moreover, it was one of the rarer 5th-grade elixirs. "Put away the 3-colored spirit fruit first, then follow me to the inner room." The old man's face was as calm as water. He stood up and led Zhuowen to the inner room behind the counter. A fifth-grade elixir was very rare. He did not expect that this young man in front of him would actually possess such an elixir. How could the old man not treat it seriously? The corner of his mouth slightly curled up. Zhuowen had obtained countless resources from the blood demon inheritance. Back then, even a high-grade Qiankuan bag could not contain them. Although he had left most of his resources to the Zhuo family, Zhuowen still had a lot of resources on him. At this moment, it was just right to put them to good use. The furnishings of the inner room were similar to a study room. A refreshing sandalwood fragrance slowly drifted in the air, making one feel relaxed and happy. The two of them casually sat opposite each other in the middle, while Lu stood obediently beside Zhuowen. Her beautiful eyes were filled with extraordinary splendor. When Zhuowen took out a fifth-grade elixir, she was also inexplicably shocked. "Little friend, can you let me take a look at the three-colored spirit fruit? I am one of the appraisers in the appraisal pavilion." At this moment, the old man's face was much more amiable and enthusiastic. Nodding his head, Zhuowen passed the three-colored spirit fruit to the old man. After the old man received the fruit, he carefully held it in his palm and carefully examined it. His turbid eyes revealed a trace of satisfaction. "Little friend, the quality of your three-colored spirit fruit is excellent. I will not let you suffer a loss. How about 30 mid-grade spirit stones?" After pondering for a moment, the old man named a price. 30 mid-grade spirit stones? Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded his head in satisfaction. Spirit stones were divided into 4 grades: low grade, mid-grade, high grade, and supreme grade. The exchange rate for each grade was 100. For example, a mid-grade spirit stone was equivalent to 100 low-grade spirit stones, a high-grade spirit stone was equivalent to 100 mid-grade spirit stones, and so on. It was said that supreme-grade spirit stones were extremely rare. Even if one used 100 high-grade spirit stones to exchange, no one would be willing to exchange it, unless one used rare treasures to exchange for supreme-grade spirit stones. This old man was indeed generous. According to the market price, the three-colored spirit fruit was about 30 mid-grade spirit stones. The old man did not deliberately lower the price. Instead, he was just stating the facts. "Okay." Zhuowen nodded his head. The old man revealed a smile and waved his sleeve. Suddenly, 30 crystal-clear spirit stones appeared on the table in front of the two. "Here are 30 mid-grade spirit stones. Little friend, you must keep them well." The old man smiled and said. His right hand touched the spirit stones on the table. With a thought, the spirit stones immediately entered the spiritual ring, leaving only one mid-grade spirit stone lying quietly in Zhuowen's palm. Feeling the spirit energy coming from the spirit stone in his palm, Zhuowen's face revealed a joyful expression as he said to himself, "It is indeed a mid-grade spirit stone. The spirit energy inside is much richer than that of a low-grade spirit stone." "Little friend, do you have anything else you want to exchange for spirit stones? This old man can appraise them for you one by one. The price will definitely not let you suffer a loss." The old man grinned. He knew that since Zhuowen could take out a grade 5 spirit medicine, then he probably had other good things on him. This young man before him was a big customer, so he naturally would not let him go easily. "And I still have some things that I don't need to exchange for spirit stones." Nodding his head, Zhuowen bent his finger and tapped. Instantly, the remaining resources in the spiritual ring were all piled up on the table between the two of them. Soon, they piled up into a small mountain. Most of them were grade 3 and 4 spirit medicines, as well as some armor skills of a lower grade. There was also a small amount of earth-rank spirit treasures. Looking at the small mountain of resources on the table, the old man and Lu were both stunned. Their faces revealed astonishment. They did not expect that Zhuowen actually had so many resources on him. The old man's eyes instantly revealed a trace of brilliance. He looked at Zhuowen as if he was staring at a pie. He really did not expect that this young man before him actually had so many resources on him. With so many resources, the old man could earn quite a bit just from the commission alone. Therefore, the old man's expression was even more enthusiastic at this moment. 4 hours later, Zhuowen and Luer walked out of the inner room under the old man's enthusiastic lead. Zhuowen took out too many resources. Even the old man spent 4 hours to appraise them. Zhuowen's harvest this time was not bad. After exchanging all the resources on him, he obtained a total of 50,000 mid-grade spirit stones. Due to the appraiser hall's regulations, the highest amount of spirit stones that could be exchanged could only be mid-grade spirit stones. Otherwise, Zhuowen would have exchanged all the mid-grade spirit stones on him for high-grade spirit stones. Little friend, if you have anything that you need to exchange for spirit stones in the future, feel free to look for this old man. This old man will definitely give you a fair price, the old man said to Zhuowen rather enthusiastically. Nodding his head, Zhuowen said indifferently, "Don't worry. If I really need to exchange for spirit stones in the future, I will definitely look for you." As he spoke, Zhuowen was about to leave the appraiser hall with Luer. However, just as he was about to step out of the appraiser hall's door, a burst of noise suddenly came from the depths of the hall. "Let's go quickly. This time, the appraiser hall's 4th floor will be auctioning the Greater Infinity Sword formation. You have to know that this is a Grade 5 origin formation. Although its power is greatly reduced due to the lack of a portion, its power is far more powerful than an ordinary Grade 4 origin formation. I'm afraid that many Arcana Masters will come to bid for this Greater Infinity Sword formation this time." 2 people passed by and were discussing matters regarding the Greater Infinity Sword formation. This caused Zhuowen's eyebrows to slightly raise. He did not expect that the appraiser hall would actually auction a Grade 5 origin formation. This caused Zhuowen to be rather curious. Just as Zhuowen was pondering about the Greater Infinity Sword formation, a familiar voice suddenly came from behind him. "Zhuowen, you really came to the Imperial capital. Haha, I knew you would come." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.